board meeting. Here we are again on a small screen, so I do struggle sometimes to spot everybody, but welcome to you all. Usual protocols, please be aware that the meeting is being recorded, and obviously we should use suitable language towards each other, respect each other, and be courteous to each other. Please, could you have your microphone switched off so that we don't get the echoey sort of sounds that we sometimes get? And could I ask if you could put in the chat your name and the organisation that you are here representing? Sorry, that's me typing. I better stop doing that. Yes, the organisation you're here representing, so that we can capture that for the actual minutes. We'd be grateful for that. I'd kick off the meeting by asking if there are any apologies. Is anybody aware of any apologies? I think, Peter, you have some, or Christine?
Yes, I have a few, Brandon. Gabby Meetas from NHS Lanarkshire, Steps Parent Council, Diane Brisbane, and Councillor McLaren. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else aware of any apologies? Okay, thank you for that. The notes from the last meeting, which took place in August, seems a long while ago, but it was in August. These have been circulated, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to go through them and remind yourselves, and maybe if there were some actions you needed to do, make sure that those were taken up and completed. Is anybody going to be able to propose that we accept those notes, those minutes of that meeting? Don't be shy.
I'm happy to propose, Brandon.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Any seconder?
I'm happy to second, Brandon.
Thank you very much. There may be some items that are already in tonight's agenda, which are continuations of the points raised in that set of minutes. If we look at the local priorities and things that are part of the local outcome improvement plan, we have a number of initiatives on that and some updates. The first one that I have on my list is to do with health inequalities, and I take it that that would have been presented by Gabby.
Yes, it would, Brandon.
We've had obviously a report sent through from the health improvement team. Not sure how we're going to deal with this, because obviously there's nobody here from that team to present. Has anybody, what we could do is, has everybody actually seen that report that was sent through? Yes, nod your head, something like that. Yes, yes. Thank you. It's a bit difficult because obviously without somebody here from that team, was there any questions that came to people's minds that they might have wanted to ask if somebody was here? So at least we can have those put down and put to them to come back with some responses. Right, okay. I think our best bet then is to leave that one maybe open, because certainly it would have been much better if somebody had been here to to present on that so that we could have asked some questions where required. On the plan, there is also Moodiesburn West. I think it's Peter going to have.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple of things and then bring in, we've got Katrina Shalley, who's a Moodiesburn resident and is part of the subgroup up there. Hi, Katrina, thanks for coming along. The group have met a couple of times, and I think there's two of the issues that have come up that maybe Katrina can elaborate a wee bit, is the need to obviously support Moodiesburn West, but the wider Moodiesburn community as well. And also the group has identified there's a real need for an anchor organisation in Moodiesburn, and I think there's been some progress on that as well. Can I maybe bring you in, Katrina, at this point to maybe just elaborate a wee bit further, if that's okay?
I think you're on mute, Katrina. No, I think the technology is not quite got there yet. No, we still can't hear you. Right, hold on a minute. You've put something. No, right, okay. I think Peter, it's still with you because obviously Katrina's not able to speak at the moment for some reason.
Thanks, Brandon. We do have Claire as well as here, Claire Williams, who in her role as one of the Northern Corridor volunteers has been part of the group and supporting it. So Claire, would you be happy enough just to give a brief update on what the subgroup's been up to?
Certainly, Peter, the most of the work that's been done outside the subgroup meetings is to help the guys establish the community body in Moodiesburn. And so they have formally constituted, and they've got a set of aims and objectives, which very much mirror the outcomes in the LOIP. So hopefully between that wider kind of development work in Moodiesburn and addressing some of the other priorities, it looks like that LOIP priority is moving forward quite nicely. And well done to the guys for coming together and sticking their heads above the parapet and forming a group.
Thanks, Claire. I would just add to that, and I think Katrina will agree with me, that you guys have had great support from Northern Corridor volunteers to help move things along there, Katrina. So thanks to Claire for that as well. Back over to you, Chair. I think somebody's got their hand up. Greg?
Yes, Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much. That's great news, Peter. I'm extremely excited that the fact that we'll have an anchor organisation for Moodiesburn finally. The point that I would kind of raise at this stage is it's just for a bit of clarification. Will the Moodiesburn group oversee the full area of Moodiesburn, or is it just a certain part of Moodiesburn? It's just a wee bit of clarity on that.
It's for any resident of Moodiesburn, Greg.
Perfect, Claire. Thanks very much.
Katrina, have you been able to sort your... No, all right, okay. At least you can hear us. Any other comments on Moodiesburn from anybody? Okay, Peter, I have you again against children and young people.
Chair, Anne-Marie Kitlin's had her hand up there. I don't know if she wanted to come in on that Moodiesburn one.
Right.
It was Literally just to say that it's great that there is going to be a residents group going to be representing Moodiesburn. It's great that that's happening. Congratulations, guys. Look forward to hearing more from you.
Can I just come in and that I've got my hand up as well here to say that that's fantastic news. And if there's any support or any partnership working that we can do in Glenboig, any support that we can give, then we'd be delighted to work with you. Okay.
And obviously, I would expect that Moodiesburn would be welcome to attend things like the Northern Corridor Community Forum meetings as well. Peter, the children and young people.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, the subgroup has, I think, has been discussed before. That subgroup's really only going to move if it's based on what young people want. I'm glad to say that they've had great support from my CLD youth work colleague, Caroline Simpson, from Anne-Marie down and Caroline down at Cardowen, and from Jordan at Glenboig Development Trust. And they recently held a consultation event with the young people to find out what their issues are in particular. And from that, there was a raft of issues that came, and an idea to maybe look at running a health-based project out of the Pivot Centre in Moodiesburn, with potentially support from Glenboig to transport some of the other young people from areas like Cardowen and Glenboig over there. So we met up with Caroline. We put an application together to the Cumbernauld and North Locality Consortium, and I'm glad to say it was successful. And there was an application in for £2,500, but the consortium members were that impressed with the young people that they actually extended the application to £3,000, which is fantastic, and that will hopefully be kicking off soon. So well done to them, fantastic news. But certainly the young people came out with a raft of issues they want to take forward in the new year, and certainly this health project helps kick that off as well. In the future, perhaps at the next meeting after the project's been running a month or two, a couple of the young people are going to come along with Caroline supporting them, maybe to give us an update on how things are progressing. So something to look forward to perhaps for the next board meeting, Chair.
Right. This leads on almost on to the next point. You mentioned about getting people to the meetings, because of course it is very difficult to travel between the different villages across the Northern Corridor. So I take it that efforts are being made to make this as inclusive as possible, so that young people from all areas of the Northern Corridor can participate.
Absolutely, Brandon. And I think, I don't want to preempt, I don't know if Christine's on to talk on community transport next, or perhaps Teresa's going to come in. But certainly, yeah, it's a wider issue, not just for the young people, as you pointed out. I mean, some of the issues around Cardowen, for example, there's not even a bus service. There's a 38C, as you probably all know, runs along Cumbernauld Road and doesn't take the 30 seconds or a minute it would take to go up the main drag there and come back down. And that's an issue that the community transport group are looking at. But yes, certainly with support from Glenboig Development Trust, we're looking at ways, or certainly Caroline and the subgroup are looking at ways to get young people from those surrounding areas over to Moodiesburn. And I believe, again, Teresa, I don't want to preempt anything you've got to say, but I think on the back of that as well, you guys are looking at setting up another project in Glenboig too, potentially on a Friday night.
Yeah, we are here to support with community transport for any groups within our Northern Corridor area, of any other groups out and about, to get young people moving about the area to any groups that they've got to go. But we've set up a Friday night drop-in and also a Warham Hub on a Friday night in our centre for young people, and it's a drop-in cafe from 2 different age groups. There's an early one and a later one, so primary school and then high school, with the opportunity to either come in, drop in, talk to their friends, use the Xboxes, play snooker. Really, it's whatever the kids want. Some of them just want to drop in, get something out of the cafe and have a chat to their friends. So that's available for anybody, and we will provide transport for any young people that want to get here.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to come back in with one other thing on children and young people if I can, because I see that John Fleming's here tonight from Police Scotland, and I know John's linked in with the Caroline as well, and Moody's wanted to address some of the issues that have been raised there. Again, sorry if I'm preempting stuff you're talking about earlier, John, but I thought that was worth mentioning as another development there.
Yeah, we've been down a couple of times now, looking forward to going down tomorrow. I think there's had a kind of minor incident a couple of weeks ago when we weren't present. However, sorry, about 4 weeks ago now, we went down 2 weeks ago, and I think the kind of young people caught word that the police were in and didn't attend. So tomorrow we'll go down maybe a bit later and just trying to get into them. But the young people that are there certainly kind of willing to speak to us, kind of and get involved. Essentially, there's no issues or anything like that happening down there. It's a really good kind of project that they seem to be running as well.
Teresa, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, John, could I have you drop them into Glenboig into our club on a Friday night as well, please, if you don't mind? It's on from 6 o'clock to 9:30.
Yeah,
I'd like to build a relationship with the community police, with the young ones. Years ago, we had a great relationship where, you know, we linked into community police. Any problems, then we come straight to you and they were solved. We don't have a lot of problems in Glenboig, I've got to say, with young people, but it would be good just for them to get to know that connection.
Yeah, no problem at all. We're on, it's every kind of second week, we're on a Friday late shift, so we'll certainly pop in this week.
Right, that's great, thank you.
And my only point was, how is all this being publicised? How are we getting this information through to our young people?
Certainly, Caroline, through the auspices of CLD, has been getting word out, and as I say, linking in with, in particular, the guys down at Cardowen to try and get more young people involved there, and as I said, through Jordan at Glenboig and Teresa. So yeah, I think it's very much a starting point. I think the development of Glenboig is a real addition, which is a real great additional outcome. And I think the more we can spread the word, yeah, through those guys and through people that are here tonight, spreading the word amongst their organisations, that would be probably word of mouth would be the best way at this stage.
We're all on Facebook and on our website as well, and obviously we have posters and things, and we're in the schools as well, informing in the school, handing out flyers. We've went over to Gartcosh with flyers. I don't know if the youth team have been to Moodiesburn yet, but they are going round with flyers for the different clubs that we've got on, trying to get out as far as we can. So that will continue with us. But word of mouth in the communities definitely is one of the best ways to get word out to young people.
Anne-Marie?
Thanks, Brandon. It was just to say about the youth engagement, the subgroup that happened there. 2 young youth volunteers actually attended on behalf of the community of Cardowen, and the transport was facilitated by Glenboig Development Trust, and it's a discussion that we've had quite a few times with Caroline at CLD, and it's obviously been mentioned here before about actually utilising that community transport. It's magic to hear that there has been an award via the consortium for running a programme based around about health, and that, you know, we can certainly advertise that all on our social media when something is planned and utilise that community transport to engage more of our youth to be able to attend these events that are happening and, you know, what is community centres that are in their own community, but they can access it with community transport if it's going to be provided. That's fantastic news. And our 2 youth reps really enjoyed participating in the event, and they came back with lots of information, and they were delighted about all the things that were being discussed, and they were keen to spread that by word of mouth and speak to their friends and pass it on as well. So there's been a wee bit of a mutter around about the community with the kids and saying, oh, well, what is it that's happening and how do we get this bus and when can we go? So that will be good to hear about the programme that's going to be planned and up and coming. That's fantastic news.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And of course, this really does lead into, I suppose, community transport. But before we go into community transport, can we just give, I believe Evelyn Ryan has appeared in the background somewhere, just a little bit of warning that we'll come back to the health inequalities piece after the community transport. So I think Christine, you've got the community transport lead, I believe, on this.
Chrissy McNally's not on tonight, and I can't really give you much of an update in community transport, to be honest. Maybe Peter could give more of an update.
Right.
I don't know if there's a lot of progress. I couldn't tell you. I apologise. I should have got that information from Christine today.
Right.
I'm happy to come on unless Anne-Marie, I know you're on the subgroup. Would you like to give an? I mean, I think we touched on the 38C scenario. That seemed to be the big issue. And I think some of the other chat was around trying to link in the community transport providers in particular, including CASE and Glenboy Development Trust. So maybe Anne-Marie or Claire would, if you'd like to come on.
Claire has put her hand up.
Thanks, Brendan. I'm just butting in quickly because I have to actually leave at 7. In the chat, I've put details of a wee workshop on community electric car share, which is being provided by the Energy Saving Trust on Wednesday the 30th. That was another thing we've discussed at the subgroups, that, you know, sometimes a bus isn't what people need. Sometimes it's a community car share. So if anyone's interested in coming along to that, it's an overview of how you start a club and you know, the funding that's available to do that.
Anne-Marie?
Well, as part of the subgroup, the meeting that we last had, we certainly did discuss the buses that are running via the Northern Corridor and how insufficient the service is. From my point of view, it really was about there being no direct service coming into the community of Cardown, and we had an agreement at the meeting that there was going to be representation made to the Transport Minister, SPT. They were going to, you know, make a request about this actual service that does run along the Cumbernauld Road and seeing if there can be a diversion added in for that bus to come into Cardown, especially when we don't have access to post office or bank facilities or anything round about this area now, that it's the only link that is running to what is the nearest post office for a lot of what our pensioners are and who still use those direct services and maybe don't do as much online activity and stuff. They still like to visit the post office, but when they can't get on a bus to get to it, it makes it really difficult. And it's really quite infuriating that that bus service runs and bypasses a whole community that could really, really support our older residents that want to use that facility and get to what our nearest post office and such is, which is Muirhead. Also, what is going to be our new health centre in Muirhead and Christ. You know, it's the only one bus that is sort of running for them that could divert into our community and be able to give, you know, public transport links to those people. So I'm looking forward to see the outcome of the request to see if there can be a diversion added onto that service and bring it to this community would be fantastic. And certainly we did discuss community transport and how it could be utilised. You heard us say how it was utilised for the young people's consultation that happened, where the bus was able to come along and pick up our volunteers from the community and take them along to that session to be a part of it. And a lot of the things are happening in community places, but they're not accessible to all because of the transport link. So it's trying to combat that. So yeah, hopefully steps will move forward and it'll help a wee bit, but the bus service is horrendous. And I see Colin's hand going up. He's the man that knows quite a lot about how rotten our bus service is. So hopefully he's got something good to add. Cheers, guys.
Right, thank you, Anne-Marie. And a mention also for Crowwood Grange, also needing some sort of access to the transport facilities. Councillor Lennon had his hand up first, so we'll let him get in before Colin.
Brandon, thanks very much for letting me come in. That's probably a good point to update folk, considering the fact that public transport's been raised here. I met with SPT today to go over a number of points in relation to the provision for Moodiesburn and Gartcosh in particular at the moment. I know I've been contacted over the last couple of weeks in relation to Glenboig as well, so I used that as an opportunity today. In significant discussions with SPT, obviously they're the sort of client for the private providers. However, it was the same rhetoric and same line for COVID, but there was an agreement there in relation to the number of cases that I've presented to them over the last, especially 2 months, I would say it would be. People being stranded in Glasgow city centre or stranded somewhere else in one of the villages and not able to get home. They've took recognition to that fact, and there's a meeting scheduled, I think, for next week with myself and the first in McGill's to have a wider discussion on how the provisions currently being operated within the villages. Obviously, this is Ward 6 and no the wider Northern Corridor, but as I said, I'm happy to extend that to the wider Northern Corridor at the meeting, considering it will be taking place next week if folks are interested.
Colin?
I think, Greg, you've just stolen my thunder there. I think that's exactly what we like to hear. I know I provided a lot of feedback back to Joanne Kelly and stuff like that, and it's still really frustrating the fact the lack of service. And we were talking about adding stuff, but to get the basics right before we add, I think it's brilliant. But it's about how, and this isn't just an issue locally. This is an issue. I know one of my friends has left the bus service because of the way the drivers have been treated, and that's fundamental. That's the basics. I'm not getting the basics right. I think for me, again, hitting the nail on the head, being stuck in the town, not being able to go home, getting my wife to come in, getting the train. We need to get the basics right.
Any other contributions about transport?
Sorry, the other one as well, but there was talk of the council was wanting to do some provision or whatever. Is that still being looked at, Greg? Or I know Claire was talking about the council looking at to provide bus services.
So,
structure or
as far as I'm aware, that notion got knocked in the head last term. But as I said, I've heard nothing come back up at committee, and perhaps one of the officers, Andrew or somebody else, can advise of that. But the other point I would say here is as well, I can't remember the correct terminology. I'm not really up to speed in relation to SPT matters, to be perfectly honest, in public transport. But I was given the other day, well, today in fact, by SPT, a kind of ombudsman report and how the bus services currently are being provided. And this is across sort of central Scotland. And they basically, every private bus provider has had a warning shot across their bows that COVID is no longer an excuse for erratic services. And basically what they've all been warned is they better get their houses into order. Colin, I totally agree with your point about let's get what we've got sorted first before we look at extensions. And I think that was a clear aspect of today's meeting as well, where I did highlight we're not asking for extra provision at the moment. We're asking for the bus service being delivered to actually function. And I think that is an important point that we must continue on.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah. Thanks.
Michael McPake.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've listened with interest about the discussion around buses here, and absolutely really good points been made. But this is not a new thing, as Greg Lyons just said. This has been happening for 30 odd years since privatisation of the bus network. And what we're dealing with here is privatisation gone wrong. The companies, the big companies, the McGills, the First Buses, Stagecoaches, they'll hoover up all the profitable routes, and poor old Cardown doesn't come into that, as does Glenboig and parts of other parts of the ward, because it's not commercially sensitive. It's not commercially advantageous to these companies to do that. So we'll get the smaller buses, we'll get the crumbs off the table, if you like. And I've got to say, some of the smaller bus companies are making not too bad a job of it. In some of the cases, especially at night time in our area, we've got a bus that's very reliable from Moodiesburn, Gartcourt, Glenboig and Coatbridge, but it's nowhere near good enough. When you talk to, I was at a bus summit through my part of my experience with SPT. We were at a bus summit a couple of weeks ago that was held to address these exact problems. And it's frightening the amount of drop-off in bus patronages that has been pre-COVID. Since COVID, we come back from COVID. And the companies are clearly saying this patronage is not coming back. So they are beginning to take steps. And by the way, it's going to be, if we think it's bad just now, and I hate to be prophet of doom and gloom here, but you think it's bad just now, in months and years to come, the axe is going to fall in a lot of services because they're not getting used the way they used to. They've invested heavily into electrification of some of their services, some of their fleet, and they will pick and choose. Even at the meeting a couple of weeks ago at SPT, as a Glasgow councillor said, the 6A, I think it was, has been cut from 12 buses an hour to 8. I think this is a tragedy. And I came in and said, try having no buses an hour, from First Bus in our area. From Coatbridge, for instance, you can't get a direct bus to Glasgow. So if you're thinking that rationally, if you think on the free travel scheme that the Scottish Government provided for buses, the whole swathe of this area cannot use that because they can't get a free bus into Glasgow. They've got to use a train in a lot of areas. So we're being disadvantaged. We have been disadvantaged. And yes, it's time to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Katrina?
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Good.
Hello, everyone. No, I just I wanted to, it's actually quite funny because I went into work today and I went to get the bus at 4:30 and I met a lady at the bus stop who said, oh, my neighbour's still there. So this is to Moody's Burn. So the bus at 10 to 4 didn't turn up. The 4:30 bus didn't turn up and 2 buses turned up at 5:10. And that's the kind of, and I appreciate Cardown and Crowwood Grange is worse, but Moody's Burn used to have a fantastic bus service until that bypassed us. But I agree with what Councillor McPake is saying, but I do think that we need to rely on our councillors to, advocate for us and, be kind of a shouting and stuff. And the free bus pass as well. There's kids in our area, the young people that you guys are talking about, they're being disadvantaged because they can have the little pass, but they don't have a bus to use. So, I mean, I think that's something further down the line that hopefully Moody's Burn Community Action will be able to join you and sort of are trying to lobby ministers or whatever. I mean, that get the MP involved. And I know people have been doing that before, but the bus companies seem to just don't think that we're important enough. And it's just wondering if there's anything that we can do to make them realise that we are important. But that's me just ranting, so I'll shut up now.
No, thank you very much. Andrew McPherson?
Never a rant. It's always I always contributing to the discussion, so don't worry about that. Yeah, I mean, I just on obviously to come in, Councillor Lennon asking for me to come in, so I can't disagree with everything that's already been said, and I won't get into the arguments of privatise or public ownership, but when you have a thing in a public ownership, the more profitable routes subsidise the less profitable ones, so there's an equitable more transport provision throughout. But when you privatise it, it's all about profits, and that's exactly what we've seen. So what we've seen is that the less profitable routes have been dropped, and it's the ones we're talking about today. And there is obviously I can tell there's obviously a desire to get that, and can the council step into that space? And to be honest, no is the answer at the moment. I know when we refer to other ones like Edinburgh and Aberdeen, these are cities, and that bus route is a profitable route, and they actually make money out of it. But this is a completely different thing altogether. So unless this there really has to be a national strategy in this, as opposed to a local one, just the same as ScotRail has been taken into public ownership. That's something that might have to happen at a national level. So you maybe taking some of the heat off our own councillors, but certainly at MP, MSP levels probably where we would have to target that. And you're right, I mean, there is almost like a travel poverty coming into play here, because it's all very well the bus pass system coming into place, and we're all paying for it because we're all taxpayers, so we all pay for it, but we're not getting the same benefit as perhaps what the city authorities are getting. And the other concern that I've got for North Lanarkshire is in terms of air quality as well, because what you'll find is that with Glasgow's low emission zone coming into place, then all the smoky diesel ones, which are not allowed into Glasgow city centre, they'll all get put out to the surrounding local authorities. So the quality of bus, the more polluting bus you'll find in North Lanarkshire, and the least polluting buses you'll find in the likes of Glasgow. So sorry, I don't have a silver bullet, but I totally understand all the points that are getting made.
Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much for letting me back in again, Chair. It's just to pick up on Katrina and touch upon Andrew's points there. The privatisation elements are really for my comment. But the point that I would make here is at the end of the day, these bus companies are subsidised, and Andrew's right in that assertion. The issue that we have is the subsidised service that we're meant to be getting is not being delivered the same way in which it is. Now, whether that sits with the local MSP or MP, I doubt either are really going to have a considerable impact, but I do think that all elected members at a local level, especially if we're expressing our constituents' concerns in relation to this, could have a greater role to play if it was a united front presented to at least get the standard of service that is required and agreed, as opposed to looking at the longer term, 10 to 15 years.
Question here is there no social contract in place with these providers since they're being subsidised?
It's my understanding for today's meeting, Chair, that no, there's not. But again, it's obviously something that can be looked into. Listen, I'm the first to admit that my knowledge in relation to public transport is limited. However, today has definitely been an education for me, and the questions that will be asked is first and others when I meet with them next week will certainly be there and more.
Teresa, you've got your hand up.
I do. I think one of the biggest disadvantages that we have is that there's no public transport that's linking us into Gartcosh train station. Now, that's train stations in all our doorsteps, and I don't think that from any one of our communities we've got a bus link into that station, and I think that's something that has to be added to this massive programme to try and get SPT and all the other bus companies to listen to us. We need a link to the station, and that would be a help. I can't see us getting one, but I think it's something that we have to be pushing for along with everything else.
Katrina, you've had your hand up for a while.
Sorry, it's just a thought, and it's again, I'm sure it's gone over before, so forgive me if he's a little out, for goodness sake. But one of the things that has prompted me to sort of try and help, sort of do this thing in Moodiesburn is the volume of houses that are getting built, and I just wonder if somebody could tell me from the council or whatever, when these builders are putting their planning permission and different things in, what is the requirement from North Lanarkshire Council to, and I know the builders are not going to provide public transport, but to sort of I don't know, I mean, all these companies they must give funding or whatever. So I'm just wondering, why is there not some sort of a caveat with all these houses that are being built that public transport must be something that can be looked into with, I'm not exactly sure what I'm meaning, but I'm just thinking, all the houses that are getting built, people keep going on about it. Moodiesburn's now get one bus, Cardown's get none, and all the houses that are getting built there. And you can't rely on, one of the builders said to me at one point, oh, well, who uses the bus? Ha, ha, ha. So that's their attitude, but that's not helping us, and it's not helping the communities. And you're right what you're saying. I mean, there's people that live in Moodiesburn that now cannot get a bus to Cardown to see their families and stuff. So there is a lot going on, but I'm just wondering if anyone's asked that question, which I'm sure you've had, but I'm just wondering what the answer is to that question, if anyone would know.
Councillor McPake.
Well, firstly, to answer Teresa's question, I've certainly asked in the past about links up to Gartcosh and other train stations, and it comes back the same thing all the time. It's a commercially run business, and buses, for instance, in Coatbridge, they don't want to run near train stations in case that takes further partages away from them. And the Glenboy went to Gartcosh through the day. United don't see that as being viable for them, and at night time SPT have said that there isn't enough in our service to take it. It mean running over the timescales, if you like. So I've asked that question before. If you don't mind, I'll answer Katrina's to the best of my ability. When housing developments are asked for at the council planning stage, all these things will be looked at. But as long as they are deemed to have bus services in the area, the planning service won't try and fix a bus service. And it's been broken for years and years and years. All these things should link up, but they don't. And, you know, somebody's going to have to, Andrew McPherson will need to grow a big magic wand somewhere to fix all these things. But you're absolutely right, all these things should be looked at the planning consent, but it doesn't happen. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything to that. Thanks.
Perhaps that's a motion for us to stick in then, Michael.
Yeah, well, I'll speak to you about that then, Greg, yeah.
Isabel Kelly.
Just to go back to Katrina's point, Katrina, developers are requested to give a proportion for roads, and at one point it was around £2,000, and then the council reduced that to £900, and that was to improve roads. We also had a city deal, which was over £6 million, and there's no point in getting away from it. The bus service would improve if the roads improved. And North Lanarkshire Council took the 6.2 million, I think it was, and removed it from this area, which was required for the community growth in the house building. Some of it was for the train station, most of it was for roads. The only road we got was the one from Glenboig to the bus station, and then everything else was removed, and it went over to Motherwell to complete the orbital road. And there was a rationale put forward there that there was 3,500 houses getting built, that there was a community centre, community hub, that there was offices, and there was industrial issues there where they could use the land. And when you added up, there was also a shopping centre. So this was all to do with the Ravenscraig site and to make that viable. And quite frankly, our community was sacrificed in moving that budget. And if the roads had been improved to the level of what they should have been, then maybe the bus services would be better. And the two are linked. The roads that we were promised across the area to improve links did not happen. And the contribution from the developers, and especially in the Gap Cosh areas, went down to £900.
Anne-Marie, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Brandon. Just picking up on what others are saying there, and Alice had also mentioned about the Crowwood Grange being included in that 38C proposal of included, but that estate has now been built for, I'm estimating, round about, it must be 20 years or so, and there is bus stops right along the drag of what Crowwood Grange is, and it has never had a public service bus run through it. So I imagine that it must have been in the planning of the estate, because they put the bus stops in, but they just never ran a bus in it. So there was lots of money wasted there as well, I suppose.
Thank you. Councillor McPake.
I'll start off by amazing everyone in the meeting. I'm going to agree with Isabel Kelly, but I'm going to correct you, Isabel. The 6 million you're talking about was for the link road to Glenboig. It was actually 69 million. It was taken out the city deal for our area and put over to enhance the case for the Ravenscraig site. Now that was done for a lot of different reasons. I argued against it at our group at the time, but lost the argument. But the other thing there was, Isabel, it was also a lot of, you talk about the developers' contribution. See, the developers were, as they've done in our area for years and years, they've hedged their bets. They were waiting to see what the council was going to do. And the council will build that road. We don't need to build it. But they want the roads to be built. then they'll take advantage. If you think house building is bad just now, if the new roads went in that area, you think of the amount of more houses that would be there. So they're hedging their bets. They're sitting back, waiting in the council building the roads. Certainly the roads could be upgraded and improved by all means. But so sorry to come in and correct you as well, but you're absolutely bang on what you're saying.
Thank you. And finally, Isabel. Are you there, Isabel?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to clarify Anne-Marie's points there about Crowwood Grange. There was a road that was supposed to come from Steps off at Cumbernauld Road and go through and come out at the Fort and come out at Lochend Road in Gartcosh to take pressure away from the junction on Muirhead and take away pressure at Station Road at the lights, etc. That was all part of the money that was transferred to another community. So those bus stops were put in thinking that that road was going to be built, and the road never materialised. And thanks, Michael, for agreeing with me for once.
Thank you. Are you just waving in agreement, Michael?
No, I was going to come in again, and that road you're talking about, yeah, that was part of the city deal as well, Isabel. You're absolutely right. But again, they all fell down, and I think it is time we highlight this and see if we can get some more. I don't know where we're going to get the money from, but the bigger part of it was in the Mount Ellen, Gartcosh area, where there was a road going over the farmland there down to the A80, and that would have opened up vast swathes of land, further land for housing. So although we didn't get that, I still think we should be pursuing what you're talking about, Isabel, for that area, and take off the pressure points, Gartcosh, and the motorway junction. Sorry, I'm stumbling a wee bit here. The motorway junction at Gartcosh, that is another thing that we should be. We were told after so many houses were built in the area, that would be getting upgraded to enhance the. You know, they need to build another bit onto the bridge basically to make it a wider access and entrance to the motorway. So I think as a community, as certainly I'll be shouting about it. That needs to happen as well.
I think we just last two people here. I've got Councillor Lennon, then Isabel, and then we'll wrap up on transport. Councillor Lennon.
Goodness me, Brandon, I'm loving the new Councillor McPake, by the way. Absolutely loving him. I'm sure we'll have plenty of work on together, Michael, in the coming months.
Councillor McPake's always been the same, Greg.
Goodness me, Mikey.
Well, I think that we need the pair of you to apply pressure that you can.
Listen, that's what I'm coming on to say. Michael, whatever you need and whatever support you need from me and whatever I can do, you've got it. So anything at all for the betterment of the area.
Thank you. Isabel? You're still on mute, Isabel.
Michael's right, that road leading to the motorway was to be upgraded to 3 lanes and was part of that money as well, which never materialised. The point that was made to me about that particular road was that the triggers for that road had to be 2,000 houses. Now we're past 2,000 houses between Glenboig and Gartcosh within the community growth area. So somebody should be asking questions, because the trigger for that road going in was to be 2,000 houses.
Thank you, Isabel. Peter McNally, you've got your hand up. I hope it's not about transport.
Just to end the conversation, which has been so good, I would ask that if people could maybe send myself or maybe Teresa as Glenboig as the community transport chair, just a wee note of those points made tonight. I think that's really positive. Something I'm sure that the community transport subgroup would want to look at, maybe make some recommendations for formalisations there's obviously that initial chat about the 38C bus, and we can see that there's other issues around that. So if I could ask, if that's okay, if people could just forward over in very small paragraphs and sentences and bullet points even, those points, and if not to me, then to Theresa Aitken or Christy McNally, please, and the subgroup could then get a look at them if that sounds reasonable.
Yes, and obviously the subgroup can could use that material to pass to the councillors to help support the cause. Can we move on? I've lost her. Evelyn. Is Evelyn there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Ah, right. You've all moved around on my screen. Right. Are you able to tell us anything against the heading of health inequalities? We did have a report circulated from the health improvement team.
Ah, right. Unfortunately, Brandon, I'm unable to do that because I haven't got access to it at the moment. That would have been Gabby who would have spoke to that, but I don't see she's on the meeting tonight by the looks of it.
She's unavailable.
Right. So I apologise for that. I'm unable to give an update on it. As I say, I've not got access at the moment to kind of, because obviously I'm at home and it's quite temperamental, the IT. I'm just trying to think the best way. As I say, Gabby has actually inputted into the system, the updates, etc. But I apologise, I just don't have that tonight to be able to do that. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Do you have anything from your own specialism to report?
Nothing really, apart from obviously the new build, the Christ Community Health Clinic. It's going to plan at the moment. Obviously, the building's on its way, and it's hoping to be. I'll just tell you, it's hoping to be August, September of next year. Date depending on how handover date of the clinic to NHSL. So once it's all operational, that'll be handed over to us. So it is going to plan just now, Brandon. And I don't know for yourselves, if you've been up that way looking about, you'll have seen the improvement going ahead, but it looks really, really nice. I did send a link, I don't know if he's got access to it, for your own perusal to see where we are with it, about the plans, about the inside, what the building kind of looks like. So I did send the link, so I don't know if it was shared with you.
I can't say I've seen that link. Anybody else?
I sent it to, would it have been, oh, Mr. Costello. If you've not seen it, I'll revisit that. But I did send it to the person who puts up the agenda, etc. But I'll revisit that again as soon as you get access, because it's actually
Brandon,
quite good.
sorry, Brandon, I was just going to say, if Evelyn can send that on to us, we'll make sure it's circulated.
Yes.
So is that yourself? Who's that? Sorry, I can only see
it's Christine Boyle, Evelyn.
Oh, Christine, right, okay. Right, listen, I'll resend that then. I've maybe sent it to, who was it before yourself? Was it Costello, Mr. Costello? Is that the wrong name?
Yeah, I think Matt's on the
Matt's
Matt's on, but
Leanne Pollock, you probably sent it to.
Oh, it was Leanne, I beg your pardon. Right, Christine, what I'll do, I'll send that to you tomorrow, but I would advise you to have a look at it because it's really good. It's giving you a wee bit detail about the building, the progress, etc. So I'll get that sent out to you tomorrow, okay? Via Christine.
Thank you for that. Now, I mean, you've brought into the mix the facility that's being built. Obviously, the larger portion of that facility is for education. Do we have an update as to what's happening on that end?
I'm sorry, Brandon,
that won't be Evelyn.
No, sorry, not going to be me.
No, that wouldn't be you.
Sorry.
Does Peter? Do we have anybody that can tell us what's happening from the new build end of that? Well, it's now going to be called a community hub, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's something under community matters that Christine's got an update with 2 or 3 things. We can maybe remit to then if that sounds okay, Brandon. There's a few issues around the Christ Hub in the school, etc., that can be picked up there.
All right, so we'll pick that up a little later on. Okay. Building local relationships, trust, and communication. Camille Van El has got this one.
Hello, Brandon. Hello, everybody. Yes, we have managed to meet finally. I've been off for a while, but it's all good, all positive. We have discussed several things: relationships between communities and statutory and voluntary sector. Also, we talk about processes, but mainly I've got this update pretty much detailed. So I don't want to talk about everything, and don't want this conversation to turn into transport, because that was very good, but also very detailed. I'll start with local services and mapping, which we have discussed, and there was a couple of ideas and about challenges and opportunities with the Northern Corridor, including communities of places like Mount Ellen and Cordovan, mapping exercise of local services, NHS, and other opportunities. We started with the idea of a spreadsheet and file and then shared file, and we ended up with support from Andrew McPherson to create some sort of equivalent or something compatible with existing NL community drop-in points, which is on the website northlanarkshire.gov.uk /benefits and money /cost living, and then community drop-in points. There is a map of North Lancashire with all the actual points. It's something similar to system we used to have was locator tool, and that one you can actually zoom in variety of localities across North Lancashire. So it's not just particularly for Northern Corridor, but that would work perfectly, because it doesn't require any technical knowledge. Just basically zoom in if it's on the phone, just to extend the zoom, and you could see all the I would say local services, and that's what we discussed. Now, what's happening actually around relationships and trust and communication? We have agreed that we've got a limited number of facilities in the villages, and also we discussed moving resources between areas. We talked about what is missing and what people need: young people, elderly, and older people. The needs are different, and also we were talking about following the change that is happening. You have discussed actual transport, so that's a similar thing is happening here, to catch up, forecast, or even predict pretty much the need in different age groups. We talked about advantages of the uniqueness of the Northern Corridor and redesigning the service around the physical design of the villages. It's really hard to rebuild everything from scratch. So we are thinking about redesigning the whole basically service around this, what is already there physically, how this could work, and pretty much lack of town center. And we are talking about the gaps and moving forward and addressing those gaps, and information sharing with access to the local services, how to enable local community to share this information as well. When it comes to communication plan, and we talk about existing communication channels with NLC, NHS, and organizations and groups, that they are actually very, the last ones, they're very active on social media. Publicity, we're talking about existing and new social media and local publications, what's happening actually at the moment with new development approaches, so how we can use them in Northern Corridor. We are talking about efficient communication management systems and avoiding communication overload, which often results in the people being, I don't know, demotivated, put off from joining the move, the really development, and they are missing out on those key developments. And we are talking about this. So how to restrict the amount of information being shared to only this what is encouraging, as opposed to really stopping the progress. And then there was development and engagement and the communication charter agreement. We were talking about the rules of engagement with the subgroup and the community boards, but not locality specific by NLC, something that we could actually perhaps have across the board. I'm sure there is lots of legislation, but you're talking about something specific. And then finally, consultation meetings with a variety of age groups, and developing a way to allow the community to consult themselves, really, and present And that was very interesting because we haven't discussed that. That was pretty much a cause of a lot of frustrations in the past, but we agreed we're going to add that. So to allow the community to consult and present some sort of red line or a liberum veto where actually some plans are being introduced and actions, and if they are affecting in any negative way the local community and their well-being, they can say pretty much no to it in some sort of organized but also very civil and efficient way. So we thought it's important to mention that. And action points from every meeting. So this is what I have covered, and a few other things I'm going to say. We're going to turn into work plan and work on it. That's the plan. And the meeting was very positive. There were also other things like discussions with NLC and planning, pretty much department planning, to reach agreements and a variety of things. So we want to actually meet with NLC planning and discuss surrounding community and get feedback, and create those links and discuss lack of facilities and this unique logistics to specific to the area, to locality. And the final thoughts were on the cost, basically cost of room hire, of rooms, and where events for locality, for events for groups and local community, which are often absolutely amazing, and organizers of those events are absolutely amazing, and then the ideas are fabulous, but it's almost for nothing if they charge very little, but the venues are charging like 10 times over for just pure ignorance, basically, just to make money. So we were thinking that's something we have to talk about, and how we're going to change it, how we can actually make it different, where we can meet, and that's why planning, and maybe we can find some sort of solution to it, because it's with this cost of living, it's pretty much stopping a lot of actually fabulous local actions and activities and projects from happening. And the final one was which was pretty much developing a directory of services, and we decided that already been covered by actually this mapping and this actually IT system, and where we actually discussed this community drop endpoints online map on Lancashire Council website. That will be pretty much it. So we're going to remove this point for the future meetings, because it's the same thing, to make it online, make it active. But perfectly honest, to be perfectly honest, that ideally should work across the board in the whole North Lancashire, every locality, not just Northern Corridor, because it's such a great and easy tool. So that's all from me for this one. Do you have any questions?
The key takeaway from what you've been saying is obviously the communication and consultation piece is very, very important to us in terms of building trust and better relationships. That has been an area of great concern amongst the communities in the Northern Corridor when things happen out of the blue, because there has been no consultation with those of us in the community. Isabel Kelly, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was on the group with Andrew and Camille. Camille's probably diplomatic, but I did raise. We looked at the current tool the council has on cost of living, where they have areas for people to go to keep warm, things like that. So they've created this website and location plan where you can zoom in the plan, and we actually thought we could recreate that for services that North Lancashire provide, which is open access, services that health provide, which is open access, say things like for physiotherapy, diabetics, things like that. So a kind of services related section for North Lanarkshire, a kind of health related section, and then community organisations, what they've got on, when they've got it on, and actually use the tool that's getting used for the cost of living. If we could hijack that at some point and put all the information into it, and things like where halls are, how they can be rented, what the rates are, everything all under the one umbrella. Second thing was we spoke about consultation and the fact that consultation really doesn't take the form of consultation. It actually takes the form of, we're going to do this, do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, but we're going to do it anyway, which is, you know, what happens with North Lanarkshire. So we raised that, and that would have to change, and we put that under a charter as, you know, the way that organisations and the council really should be communicating with each other. I raised an example of officers saying they wouldn't attend the community board. Under a charter, they should not be allowed to do that. If we want them to speak about a particular subject, then they should come at the community board and speak to us. So, you know, there's no point in having a communication strategy or look at how we can engage and improve communication when we've got actually council officers that say, oh, actually, I'm not going to discuss that. There should be nothing that should be out of the bounds of discussion, bar things that are truly commercially sensitive. And the extent that that's put to having to get information through freedom of information, which is what we're continually have to do, is put in freedom of information requests to get basic information about what the council officers are doing or what they think our individual communities want, is unacceptable. So we should have a written charter on how these people should be carrying out their function and how we should be responding to them. And that means us being courteous and putting our case forward correctly as well. But it's unacceptable that council officers dream up plans and then come to community boards with a presentation and things that get passed in the Policy and Strategy Committee, and we have absolutely no say. So that was more of the discussion about what we had.
And that will lead on to something later in the agenda, the Concord Act. But there is already a framework for consultation published by North Lanarkshire, which you would have expected that they would follow themselves. Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just following on from Isabel Kelly's points there, what I would like to ask is obviously there's a number of critical factors Isabel's just raised, especially how council officers are presenting themselves to community groups and members of the public. Has there been any work done in the short term, obviously for this being proposed this evening, to address this issue, and what's the plan going forward? Perhaps Andrew could advise.
Brandon, is that right?
Andrew, I think Councillor Lennon has put you on the spot.
Yes, aye. That's fine. No, to be honest, my own opinion of it is that, you know, anything that we can release in an FOI should be released without an FOI. I don't think there's any point in asking people to go through that process. That's my own sort of principle and that thing. And obviously asking officers to come along. And I don't think any reasonable request should be refused. I definitely don't think that's the case. But there's obviously an issue in whether it's a perception of whether it's the real thing about officers just simply choosing not to go along because they don't want to. I don't think that's right either. But that's something, it won't just even apply to the Northern Corridor. This is something that'll have to be a sort of a corporate policy for the council. You know, that we'll have to, you know, to commit to do this. And I think through this, you know, your Concordat and even looking at, you know, what the policy is in the council at the moment is something that we'll take forward. But to answer your very specific question, Councillor Lennon, no, there's nothing been done in the short term. This was only discussed this week, really. So we'll pick that up over the coming months.
Bit unfair of me, Andrew, but thanks very much.
I don't worry about it. No problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you, Camille. Your next spot, actually, Camille, is the social integration and inclusion.
Yes.
Priority.
I'm not going anywhere, Brandon. I've got this one as well. So again, more good news from this subgroup as well. We have divided that onto the basically priorities and try to actually put a couple of ideas, and this is what actually we could do as a subgroup. what the community and volunteers could do. So the first one was young people, to identify young people in groups, organizations, and activities that are available and operate actually with young people, like Brownies, Scouts, football clubs, and then a survey for young people what they want, what they really want to do, whether it's something to do with education, maybe evening classes, schools, after-school clubs, maybe some sort of gaming clubs. What is they really interested in doing? Elderly population, identifying same pretty much people in groups, organizations, activities available, and this time around there'll be churches, clubs, and social clubs and things like that. And again, survey for elderly, what they might be interested in doing, whether it's a meeting, maybe some sort of newsletter, maybe bingo, something like that. And older people, same old. It's just different group. The issue was there was no. This approach is I think very appropriate because social isolation. There is a reason for everything, and we will break it down using this measure. We believe that this is going to have better impact because we'll be addressing people's needs directly. And people in different age groups, they have different actually needs, and also they have different interests and different engagement. So we can't really propose everything because like if we propose everything, it's going to be very little interest in this because in everything nobody will be interested in. But if something particular, well described, yes, but they'll have to address their needs. Now we've got those living with disabilities. We can't forget that, both physical and mental, especially now after a pandemic. It's enough to check the BBC News, what's happening with mental health and how many people actually are off work because of that. So contacting groups, those who are living with disabilities, NHS, carers, organizations, and survey, because I have spoken with one of the organizations even yesterday. And the last survey they done was before the pandemic. I was very surprised. So this idea is still valid. However, it depends what sort of questions we're going to ask, and the questions have to be actually very, very good and accurate to this what we want to actually research and follow through. Again, this has to be very much linked with this what they are interested in doing. Then we have carers and carer support organizations and groups, including NHS, Lanarkshire Carers, North Lanarkshire Carers Together, what services they offer in this particular locality, and what local organizations actually offer, what has been changed since the end of the pandemic, and now we've got pretty much beginning of winter. What is the change, and what's going to be provided actually during this time? And we need to find answers for those questions. Then we've got Black and ethnic minorities. So this is important to include them as well. There's lots of people coming into North Lanarkshire. I'm even like meeting them on the playgrounds. They go with kids on walks and things, and we have chat and things. Question is, where do they go? Who do they meet? And how they socialize? And we don't know that. And what's happening in the Northern Corridor, and what actual local churches are doing, what the local groups and organizations are doing to address those needs, if they are doing anything at all. If so, we want to know. And also, what has been proposed is a workshop or a series of workshops and focus groups, and even training for those people. I have received today an email with that was ESOL classes from the college. They're starting this again, and things like that they have to be actually promoted. And the final one was about wider issues, including pollution and health services and things like that. So it's all about promotion of health and well-being, and spending time outdoors actually, regardless the weather. And then final bullet point obviously has to be active travel. And this is a big one, and the Scottish Government, I believe, is changing their funding stream from incidental and like bits here and there to, I think, significant actually amount. I don't know whether it's 8 or 10% of the whole transport budget, I was told recently. So active travel is going to change. It's going to change, and the question is how Northern Corridor is going to be involved in that change. Whether I believe there is a legislation that is stopping people from championing this change, which is certain ways of means of transport are not legal. I've heard like electric scooters and some actually footpaths are not legal and other things. This has to be resolved. How people will commute to give up, and lots of people already gave up actually their personal transport, but then would they be able to access their local services just by walking? So we discussed all this, and that's pretty much it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Large amount of stuff in there, Camille. Social
A lot.
inclusion and yes, big subject.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting aside, which is personal to me, I don't consider myself black or an ethnic minority.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why you don't see people like me.
Brandon, me neither. Too long living in Scotland.
That's probably an answer to why you don't see these people.
No, but the thing is, we are talking about mental health, and that actually affects everyone. And I have seen actually and witnessed a variety of conversation where people actually are suffering, but they don't want to admit it, and that's the thing. And we want to help actually by helping others. We help ourselves as well. I think that's the way to go. Is it Colin?
Colin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I kind of, this is something I raised in the Northern Corridor, Brandon, about the kind of promoting inclusion through disability through sport. And it's maybe something I'll get the group to reach out to you, Camille, because we actually reached out to, I mean, we've discussed it in some of the Northern Corridor meetings, we reached out to one of the MPs because Broadwoods are doing a job, but not good enough. I think this points to the NLC, and we got a kind of, I think it's somebody called Joanne Bailey, Education and Family. We reached out to, I can't remember the guy's name, one of the MPs. Who's the Cumbernauld guy I mentioned?
Josh. Is it Josh?
No. We had one of the MSPs in Cumbernauld.
Hepburn.
No, anyway, we kind of reached out, so we've got some answers and stuff like that. But what the group's looking for, the kind of terms come to the end, and basically they're looking for more support and more things from the council funding. There's not enough ASN provision for various sports stuff. So I'll reach out to you guys on that.
Especially for young people. We have noticed actually young people, they just really unfortunately being locked out in their houses, and they use electronics, all the stuff they have, and it's not really much positive going on actually, except for some probably activities we don't want to cover here today, but it's a big subject, and active travel actually can help a lot, and that actually includes also we discussed that, but not in this actually subgroup. There was different locality. We discussed actually tourism. We discussed how to make basically a social enterprise out of actually a couple of ideas. We covered that actually using active travel as well. We share transport. There's a couple of websites that are not really perfect, nothing Scotland specific, that can be used. And in the Northern Corridor, we discussed actually how the PVGs, the new system, can help organization to develop their own actually local transport system around that. That also would support the transport, which we actually been discussing today. But it is a very actually a separate, I would say, agenda, separate subject. But there is a couple of ideas, but it has to also legislation change be involved in that, and it's not really one, I would say, idea and just really quick solutions. Not going to happen. I put my email, Colin, in the chat if you want to email me.
Yeah, I'll do that.
We can chat about this later.
Yeah, we reached out to Jamie Hepburn, and we got a response from somebody called Jeannie O'Neill, Head of Service, Education and Families. So we got a kind of good thing of what's happening, but it's the next steps and how we kind of push that forward. As I said, yeah, it's something I talked about in one of the last meetings before, and I thought about your group before, and it's about kind of getting someone to buy into it kind of thing. It's about helping each other at the end of the day. That's what it's all about.
Tomorrow we have a locality network event. It's pretty much a voluntary sector locality network event, and one of the guest speakers will be about active travel, recycle bike. It's Phil Jones, who covers actually the north, and if you want to pop in, that's in the Freedom City Church. It's for the whole basically north, Cumbernauld, Kilsyth, and Northern Corridor. A very good project that started in the shed, and now after 3 big chunks of funding, they have office everything, and it's running. It's they hired recently 3 people, and surprisingly, everybody wants to just work from home. Even if in active travel, where you have to train young people and teach them how to use safely bikes and how to service them. And I thought I can do it, but bikes are changing. You have to know different things, and so it's interesting. Recycle a bike, look it up or pop in tomorrow. That's in the Freedom City Church, 10 o'clock, and everybody's invited. Yep.
Okay.
So that's all
Teresa?
from me.
Teresa, you've got your hand up.
Teresa?
Yeah, I'm coming.
Okay.
You spoke about a lot of consultations there, Camille. I just wonder how they're all going to be pulled together. And I think that we're missing a big captured audience when we don't go into schools and actually consult with children and young people within the schools and find out, what's wanted there for children and young people. I know we do a lot of our consultation in our local primary schools. In relation to active travel, we've just secured funding. We've got a formal partnership with Buchanan High School and partnerships with another 2 ASN schools where we offer placements, and we've been doing bike maintenance, and we have young students in every area of our organisation on placement on a weekly basis. We've got a big formal partnership, a lot of different things that we're doing with the school, and I think that we're really missing out here and not going into schools and consulting with young people in schools, because I think that's where we would find out actually what young people are looking for. We also have a New Horizons project for ASN young people, and we've got a meeting with a funder on Friday to discuss hopefully core funding to take us forward, because what's happening with young ASN people is that once they leave school, if they've not got any destination, they keep going back to the school forever and ever and ever. And we were actually visiting Buchanan High's cafe this morning. They've got a great cafe on a Wednesday and Friday morning for the public. And actually, they've got past pupils that are coming into that, because that's where they keep going. So what we are trying to do is have destination within our community. We're bringing these young people together is give them a destination within their local community where they can go to. But, you spoke about a lot of consultations there. I'm just wondering,
I know that's important, actually, what you said, but we have this actually mentioned here within the first group, which was young people, and I have it here, survey for young people, and also education, schools, after school clubs, including staff. So this is a huge, and I was a bit worrying when I was pretty much typing all this up, all those consultations, but I didn't want to stop, this creativity, this brainstorming process, and I didn't want to just pull the plug and say, okay, we've done it last year. We shouldn't be going that way because this route, because we already done it, and people don't want to hear about consultations anymore. And some of the people don't. When you see email with consultation, you just don't want to waste your time. And unfortunately, this can be done, but it has to be a very creative way. Teresa, if you want, I'll send you an invite for the next subgroup, and I want your expertise, your experience to be part of it. But it's important what you said, but it's already there. We need people, and we will recruit more to this subgroup, those who will have links, because it's very hard to create everything from the scratch, and we have covered so much. But again, these meetings we just had were very different to those we had last year. Pretty much that was a working meeting, so we didn't waste a minute. It was just hard work on and on, and everything we have discussed, to the great detail, and education, obviously schools. Whoever has got PVG check can go and actually present stuff, but we have to go through the system schools using. We can't just go and with some leaflet. It's not going to work. I know how the system works. I've got kids at school, so it's very formal. And if you have experience, Teresa, if you could support this subgroup, that would be amazing.
I was supposed to be on that subgroup, but I've been out of the loop for a long while. So if I could get a link into, there's a couple of subgroups that I was supposed to be on. I have been out of the loop. But yeah, definitely, I would be interested in.
I'll add your name to the list, Teresa. Okay.
That's fine.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Councillor McPake, and then we'll finish off with Isabel Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. Just reiterating what Teresa said there, and I'd be willing to put my name forward for the subgroup as well. With personal experience, my son Tony, when he left school, the worst 2 years of his life were the 2 years after he left school, because he was automatically put into a college place, which was never going to suit him. And it was hell on earth for him. And if it were not for a very good locality worker in Bells Hill who spotted him and thought, you could be doing a hell of a lot more, son. And he took him under his wing. And the rest is history. He's in his own house now. Excuse me, my phone's ringing. He's in his own house and doing very well. So I would be more than willing to join the subgroup. And if any experience I've got can pass on to Andy, I'd be more than willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Isabel Kelly?
Well, this is definitely a night, Michael, of us having quite a lot in common that we don't realise. I've had a nephew who's lived with us for 14 years who's special needs and is 19 and left school. And in terms of social inclusion, something really has to be done for kids who are leaving school. They do take a college place where they maybe get life skills. They lose all their social connections. Very often, the school that they're at, they've been transported to. So when they lose that school and they lose the friends in that school, it becomes more acute. In that they have lost their friends. They go to a college place, they're often picked up by taxi, they're dropped off by taxi, and they come back home to the house, and there really is nothing for them after they leave school. So just to say that, you know, when the group's looking at social inclusion, kids who have some disabilities or some challenges there really need some additional care, especially in that first 2 years, to establish relationships within their own community, because very often they don't have the links in their own community because they're bussed out to schools. Connor stays in Gartcosh, but he went to school in Cumbernauld, and then when he stopped school, he's not in the Cumbernauld facility. He doesn't meet kids that maybe live there, and it's much the same for a lot of the kids because they come from everywhere: Kilsyth, Coatbridge, Cumbernauld, in the villages, and then when they come back home, they're isolated.
Thank you, Isabel. And that's a very important point, how people become isolated because they are being bussed to different places, and when they are moved from that system to another one, they lose all connection they had with their former friends and colleagues. Yes, it is a difficult one. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Can we move on to the Police Scotland piece?
Hi there, sorry, I should have introduced myself in the kind of last update. I'm John Fleming, unfortunately.
Hi, John.
Inspector Susan Ray sends her apologies for the meeting. So, in terms of, I think the last update the group might have had is in relation to Operation Motorex, sorry. It's in relation to acquiring quad bikes. So I don't know what the last update you'd received in the last meeting in September was in regarding that. However, I'm just to pass on that funding has been acquired, quad bikes have been acquired, and now it's just a case of getting the equipment, and myself and another couple of officers trained up on it. That's probably looking at January or February in terms of that. Other initiatives that kind of been running just now, today and yesterday, myself and my colleague, we carried out a kind of road traffic initiative over the 2 days, also on the back of Councillor Josh Cairns. I think many constituents have got to him in regarding school parking. Seems to be quite a kind of prevalent issue just now. So, not to go into too much detail, but I'll just kind of list the areas. Hopefully, it covers most of the kind of concerns that you've all been having. So, Steps Primary, open and closing time, Dewar Road, Lindsay Road, Station Road, Glenboig Primary, the new road from Old Yards to Glenboig, Drumcave Road and Auchinlock Road. So mostly that was involving kind of just taking up static positions, monitoring traffic. I think a lot of concerns just now is speed. However, only 2 of those roads we can do it through the speed gun. The other ones are just due to the kind of location of them, bends, etc., hills. it's very difficult for us to monitor. So it's just more of a kind of presence in these areas just now and seeing where we take it from there. Number of drivers kind of spoken to, warned, offences identified, no kind of tickets issued at this time. However, we'll just continue to monitor that. I think it's important that we do this maybe once a month, just based purely on the feedback from the constituencies, the areas that they want us to cover, and we'll just target them. We're usually kind of getting made aware of them from the councils and from the kind of community council groups, so happy to get any feedback in regarding that. That's all myself and Calvin have got just kind of going on in the Northern Corridor just now. For the past month, there's been a couple of houses turned in relation to drugs as well, kind of numerous drug dealing offences. Again, that's just from kind of intelligence-led operations from members of the public. So again, any inquiries you've got regarding that or any information you've got, we're really happy to kind of take that on board. Happy.
Lots of hands up, John.
Yeah.
I'll start with Anne-Marie.
Hi, John. I was delighted to see about the new quad bikes coming. As you know, that we've had some issues over the past few years with the motorbikes ripping up what is the Seven Locks Nature Reserve, which is on our doorstep. What I was interested to know is, do you know the location of where these bikes are going to be? Because I remember having a conversation about the dirt bikes that were available, but they were too far away from our area, from our locality, to be able to get them out on time. So will these new quad bikes be available within the Northern Corridor? Do you have any of that information?
Yeah, so the information I have at hand just now is that, sorry, there'll be 2 quad bikes to the subdivision, so that's Coatbridge, Airdrie and Cumbernauld in the kind of Northern Corridor. That'll be much easier to acquire than the dirt bikes, which are primarily held in Glasgow. Their training, I think, is probably between 8 and 10 officers. So there will be a kind of, at the start, I believe there's going to be a more demand for them. But if we can document in terms of the calls that are coming in for the areas, then I'd like to think it'd be prioritised in that manner. It's going to be myself, so I've obviously become taking a keen interest in the Northern Corridor anyway, but the other boy's getting his cup brain. I think you've got a kind of high level of volume for that area as well. So again, we'll just be feeding in through call demand and the kind of nature of the calls that are coming in. It's more primarily the summer months, as you'll be aware, but no, again, just when the complaints come in, we'll be trying to deal it through them.
I would also like to maybe book a test drive and see how they would pan out and over the meadow. Thanks, John.
Isabel, you have your hand up.
Sorry, that's for the last time.
Okay. Councillor McPake.
Thanks, Chair. John, thanks for the update there. There was no mention of Gartcross Primary, which I was quite surprised. I've made several, in fact, quite a few inquiries in recent times about parking behaviour up there, and just asked for a presence. Usually that's enough. You know, if you get just a presence once every so often. So I wonder if that can be included in your list there, John, please. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor, totally agree. Again, it's just over the past, we were at the Community Council for Steps more recently, and there was a kind of incident highlighted to ourselves. So usually with me to try and do it opening and closing, there's no point in us going just at the kind of 9 o'clock. We're getting most of it, it seems to be at the end of play as well. And again, Glenboy Primary, you'll be aware, just when that goes into the kind of the local community, there's numerous issues there in terms of the parking and that, and we need to really kind of monitor that. But we're late shift just now, next 2 days. Next week we're early shift. I'll be sure to go into Gartcosh as well. And again, for any other primary schools, but it was just these 2 today and yesterday. We'll go to Gartcosh in the coming days then.
Thank you. Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much, Chair. John, a great update. Thanks very much for providing that this evening. As you'll be aware, we're now coming into the sort of latter stages, or the beginning of the later nights, and inquisitive crimes, usually significant issues for the villages, especially Gartcosh, Glenboig and Moodiesburn this time of year. It's just to see if there's any proactive steps being taken this year in relation to inquisitive crime, because especially in the run up to Christmas, a lot of doors get tried in the new estates, and it's just to see if the police are going to be combating that at all this year.
So sorry, Councillor, I've not been in a position, I've not been made aware of any kind of operations that will be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks. recently there's been a kind of a mass uplift in thefts of cooking oils. That seems to primarily taking the unit that's up, taking up most of their time just now in relation to that. Businesses kind of getting targeted through that. So I'll be keen, I'll tie in with them, make them aware of kind of the concerns just now. They should be aware of that, as you say, with the kind of darker nights. And I'll speak to the inspector as well, and I'll get back to you with an update in the next couple of days as to if the proactive measures are getting taken in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks very much, John.
Thank you very much, John. It's always a pleasure to see you when you turn up to our little meetings in Auchenlock.
Oh, and apologies for the last one as well, Brandon.
No, that's fine. You had important work to do. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, we haven't got anybody from them at the moment, but they did submit their report. They always submit a very good report. If you've had the opportunity to look over it, you'll notice that most of the indicators for our area are actually green, so we don't have too many problems. The only one that is red is to do with the false fire alarms that they are receiving from some premises. I'm not sure how that is being tackled, but certainly they have a large number of false alarms that's obviously takes up their time when they maybe could be actually dealing with something that's a real event. So that's the only thing of note that I spotted in their document. Community matters. I've got a note here, Van El, development of a community concordat. Are you going to pick this up then, Camille, because you're the only representative from Van El here?
Actually,
Yes, sure.
Brandon, I'm here from Van El. Camille, is it okay if I give the update? Are you happy
Oh,
with
yes.
that?
Yeah, I've got it here, but if you want to, no problem at all. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Please pitch in if you think I've forgotten anything.
No, I'm sure you
We'll
want
make sure
to.
that we're giving comprehensive information.
Okay.
So as you'll be aware, Van El, on behalf of the North Lanarkshire Partnership and all community planning partners, were tasked with doing a consultation across each of the 9 community board areas, and more specifically with thematic groups, to gain some feedback in terms of what should go into the Community Concordat document itself. So Van El ran and hosted 3 locality events. They were Shotts, Kilsyth and Northern Corridor. But when we were looking at the numbers, although the other 6 were planned, when we were looking at the numbers and also the partner liaison for these events, we realised we weren't getting enough reach, and we weren't getting enough feedback, we weren't getting the numbers that we were anticipating. So we took a decision to take a slightly different approach to this. And that approach involving all community planning partners, and making sure that we're doing a number of things. So there are a number of actions that are going to happen between now and spring of next year. The first one is to create a survey to make sure that people who can't make it along to groups, etc., either online or in person, have got the ability to participate and make sure that they're having their voices heard. There are standard questions that have been devised that will be used in all settings and in all of this work to make sure that we're getting a consistent approach. We will do an additional 9 locality events, and making sure that partners are fully involved in them, and not just Van El leading on that. So we'll make sure all community planning partners are involved in the 9 locality events. The 3 that I've already run will most definitely, the feedback of which will most definitely feed into, the bigger, list of feedback, if you like. So the ones that have taken place to date, there's nothing lost there at all. In fact, what we're just doing is just widening the net slightly wider. Another approach that we're taking is existing groups, so groups that Van El and also community planning partners, NHS, NLC, etc., that are working with. We'll use these groups and events to incorporate that consultation element with the groups that we're working with, the communities we're working with, thematic groups, etc., to make sure that we're maximising participation there. We'll also be discussing with community planning partners themselves and doing events specifically for each of them to make sure that each of the community planning partners themselves have got the chance to fully participate in the programme. And then the new timescale for this is that next April will be the design day. Now, the design day was originally planned for the 25th of October, but because of the new approach, because of the way that we were working things, it will take place in April, and there will be invitations sent out widely for all stakeholders to that event. Once the document, using that design day to shape the document itself, once that design, the document is in its draft form, it will go to all community boards for comments and further edit. So it will come to the Northern Corridor Community Board and hopefully launched by summer of next year. So that's just a wee bit about where we're at and how we've changed slightly in terms of the process and how we believe that we're improving the process for creating the document. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirsty. I must admit that I certainly was aware that the events held in our area weren't very well attended, possibly because of where they took place, or the there was I know of somebody requesting, was there going to be one in an evening to be able to attend, and they were told basically no. So the people just couldn't get to them.
Yeah, and we appreciated that as part of the kind of reflection in the process so far, which is why we're widening the opportunities for participation. And yes, we will certainly take that on board in terms of evening availability, etc., going forward.
Isabel Kelly, you have your hand up.
Just to say, was the 3 events that you held, was the feedback fairly negative? Because I was at one of them, and it didn't seem very positive to me.
Yes, that's right, Isabel, but we captured it as it was. The other 2 events were similar, slightly different focus, as you might imagine. They were very similar, the 3 of them. We didn't edit in any way the feedback, as you would imagine, and it remains as it was and will be part of that design day too.
Well, I hope when there is a consultation, like saying online, it doesn't represent anything like we had with the MEL or some of the other consultation documents that come out, where actually you can't put your views forward. It's pick 1 of 5, and if you don't like the 5, you can't explain. So it's quite difficult if you're invested in a project and you're getting negative feedback. But really, again, this comes back to a kind of charter and communication and consultation, where there's a decision to do something here under the Concordat, which we were never part of. We're getting asked to participate on maybe how you all operate or what will be done with it, but we were never asked, did we want it? And quite clearly we felt it was a waste of money, because the Concordat should actually sit inside the community board. We should be getting the solutions, for our communities out of the community board. We shouldn't be creating yet another organisation and yet another project to support where we should be getting our ideas from. And that was what they meant. And I hope you don't take it personally if it's under your umbrella, but we were really annoyed that we were being asked. In retrospect, we weren't asked whether we wanted it. We were asked, do you want to contribute to it? And I think there's a big difference there.
Absolutely, and we took that on board, Isabel, and we fully acknowledge that this is maybe something that should have happened much earlier in the process. It's the community boards are down the line now, the Lloyd priorities are all set, the subgroups are starting to get up and running, and it's only now that we're asking the question about how we should work together. We fully acknowledge that this is something that should have happened much earlier on, and there should have been maybe a different approach to introducing it. Absolutely. Thanks for your comments, Isabel, I appreciate them.
Alice, you had your hand up, or it was up then went down?
Yes, thanks, Brandon. Kirsty, you've taken recognition that the use of the term Concordat requires to be changed.
Yes.
to something that is clearer to local people around its purpose and meaning. And just to set the record straight, there is an understanding by local people of the purpose and the meaning of a concordat. However, you have recognised that that title is probably unacceptable and that it could be a barrier to participation. What are the plans to consult and gather suggestions from the communities to change the terminology from concordat?
It's been taken and discussed at the next North Lanarkshire Partnership Board meeting, I understand. I would welcome that if anybody had any suggestions from this community board, I would be more than happy to feed that in. So yes, it's absolutely not too late to feed in some suggestions from here. If you've got anything in mind, it's very much kind of looking at something that says what it is. We like the name community because it speaks to what it is. But as for concordat, I think there was a feeling it's not that people would understand what it means, but more it's quite an old-fashioned word. It's quite an obscure word. I believe it's got its roots in religion and quite an old-fashioned basis for that. So yeah, we just acknowledge that it's not the best word, and we would gratefully receive any suggestions for improvement.
I would suggest that we should be thinking of something that's in plain English. Are you aware there is already a framework document published by North Lanarkshire? You are. So is the Concordat to replace that?
No, it's slightly different from that, Brandon. I think Vaniel were asked to give a written description of how it differs, and that has been done. I'm hoping it's been circulated already because it was certainly sent back to, I think it was Community Matters. I'm not sure, we need to check that, but we certainly provided the difference between the two documents, and they are separate and different with different purposes.
Is this going to become a little bit like I refer to as apathy, a lot of duplication of things?
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully by widening the net and making sure that people have got buy-in, and we're trying to meet with people in the places where they are, that we can, try to break down barriers, try to make sure that this is as inclusive a process and a document as possible, and that it's a genuine desire to make a difference and listen to voices across North Lanarkshire. Alice, you've got your hand up.
A second question, please, Kirsty.
Of course.
The Northern Corridor Community Board raised the previous cost of this concordat, which was £60,000.
That's right.
And you're moving towards next steps when the final concordat and the implementation plan will be visualised and sent for approval. Do you have any costings for the projected financial implications for the implementation of the concordat, since £60,000 has already been spent on this, or is being spent on this?
I can double check that for you so that I'm sure of my facts, Alice, but to my knowledge that this is all part of the same amount of money and no additional resources have been made available. It will all be contained within the original budget, and it will be able to be executed in the original budget.
Okay, well, I'd appreciate clarification on that.
I'll do that, no problem.
Thank you, Kirsty. Christine, you've got a piece on Community Board and Partnership Communication Strategy.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Chair. It's about the monitoring and management framework. Just a wee update on that. The question was asked that the management and monitoring framework is a management tool to enable the community planning partners to prepare reports on progress in relation to the LOIBs. The framework itself will not be shared with the community board, but the community board will receive updates in relation to the progress and an annual report on all priorities and progress related to those priorities. So it is a management tool. Thanks, Chair.
I'm bemused. I hope other people understood what that was all about.
No,
Are people aware of what the management and monitoring framework, have they heard about it?
I don't think so.
Right, okay. So I'll kind of explain. The management and monitoring framework has been put together as a way of gathering information about the progress in relation to the local outcome improvement plans. So, for example, any kind of progress that's been made in relation to the particular priorities that have been made, and the actions from the priorities will be put forward onto that management framework. And it's a way of recording the information and the progress that's been made. Now, the idea behind that is that it's used by the council and the community planning partners who are all involved in supporting the LOIPs and the developments within that. And it's a way of pulling off reports that will provide information about the progress that has been made in relation to the priorities that have been identified. Does that kind of clarify it any, Brandon?
Yeah, well, I think unless anyone else has got any questions, I think we'll move on. Isabel. Isabel?
Hi, Christine. That sounds a wee bit like...
Hi, Isabel.
If it's good news and we can clap ourselves in the back, we'll let the boards know. But if it's bad news and we can't deliver on it, we won't tell you about it.
I see what you're saying. The idea is that whatever's happening in terms of kind of progress will be reported. So whether that's good or it's not so good, that should still be included within that. So I take on board what you're saying, Isabel, but it shouldn't be a way of kind of making out everything's all hunky-dory when it's not. The idea is that it helps us to understand where we're achieving things or where we're not, and what needs to be put in place to support that. I don't know if does that answer your question, Isabel?
But if the community boards aren't involved, it gives a level of screening by the community partners, which the boards are not privy to. So if we come up with an idea that we think is really good, or we come up with an idea that we want to go forward with, and A, you can't afford it, which is always possible with the budget, or B, you just don't want to go there because it interferes with another strategy. We're not privy to that information, other than the fact that it's not that particular issue isn't going forward, or that particular idea isn't going forward. There's no true engagement with the community involved, because you're only going to release the reports as and when they see fit. No you per se, but
No, I know what you're saying. Anything that's happening, you're all involved in the subgroups and the LOIP subgroups. The things that are being reported back are in relation to some of that information that you're taking forward in relation to taking out the actions and things like that are related to that. So that's the kind of things that are reported. Also, like the community planning partners, if they're doing kind of work in relation to some of these priorities and how that is kind of pulled together. So it's a way of gathering that information without losing some of the things that are going on that are really important to making things happen. But the reports will definitely be fed back to the community boards on a quarterly basis. And as I said, there'll also be a report at the end of the year as well. So I think, that's all I can say. That's the information that I have just now, Isabel. But certainly, if there's any other kind of questions, then we can certainly take them back and raise them as well. So, but that's what the management and monitoring framework is about.
Okay. Well, all we can do is look and see what the first report looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Isabel.
Teresa Aitken.
Oh man, to me this isn't partnership. I feel as if the subgroups are sitting, we're doing all the work, we're achieving or we're not achieving, and we're being totally bypassed. We should be part of that information gathering, and the report should be coming back to us. I mean, this is supposed to be a true partnership at a community level. Now, this monitoring framework is way above us, so it's not at community level and it's not partnership. And as far as I'm concerned, You know, I think I just don't agree with it. I think it's just another level of management, another level of paperwork going right up the top of the tree and not coming back down to the bottom again. You know, it doesn't sit right with me at all. I've just got to say, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Well said, Teresa, that's how I feel.
Right. Thanks, Teresa. We'll certainly take that. I'll take a note of that. And we'll certainly feed that back. I appreciate you kind of giving your views on that.
Brandon, may I make a couple of comments here, please?
You can, yes.
I instigated these questions because I scrutinised the North Lanarkshire Council report, Communities Committee date 31st of October, the development of the Community Concordat. And I also scrutinised the North Lanarkshire Council report, Communities Committee 31st of October 22, and that was the Community Boards and Partnerships Communication Strategy. And if you take note of the title of that document, it's Community Boards and Partnership Communication Strategy. And I, as I say, scrutinised these and asked substantial questions on both these documents. And I'm of the view that there's still an exclusion here of the community. And that's been reinforced by Teresa and Isabel again tonight. And that there is no presence, there's no opportunity for the community to be directly involved in inputting these, for instance, monitoring and management framework. So unless we have sight of these, we're only being given a written report on these. So I would ask that you maybe think again about how the council is operating at a distance, in isolation, and is detached from communities. So you could maybe raise that, because we do feel rather disenfranchised here, that I had to sit and read 2 committee reports to begin to understand and unravel what was happening here. So if I could ask just for consideration that the communities, there is a feeling, and I've heard from Isabel and Teresa, and I'm including myself in that, we wish to be involved. This is about the community, and it's a two-way flow of traffic here. So could you maybe, Christine and Kirsty, take that back, please? And raise that. Thank you very much for listening.
We will do, Alice. Thanks very much for sharing your views on that.
Absolutely, I would echo that too. Thank you.
And just to wrap that up, in my world, you would have targets and objectives that were known by everybody, and then you would report against those so that everybody could see. And I think that's what's the problem here, is this framework isn't open and isn't available to everybody. And what reports you get, you don't know what you're comparing it to. So I think that's the message coming through. Christine, you're next up again. You've got the Christon Community Hub.
Yeah, and this isn't coming from me. I've been asked to kind of give you an update. So, and I think it came through an email that's come into us as well, and obviously has been put on the board. So, in terms of the questions that were raised, it was checked with NHSL, and the feedback was that there is no consultation taking place regarding the renaming of the health centre. It will be known as Christon Health Centre, which gives the location of the clinic, and this follows the naming process with similar clinics and centres across Lanarkshire. So that was the feedback that was given in relation to that. In terms of the target for the health centre to be operational, the target is August-September 2023. However, that date is dependent on the handover of the clinic to NHS Lanarkshire. And the primary school target to be operational is August 2023.
I think what the community is trying to get to when talking about the naming of the health centre is the health centre is meant to be for the people of the Northern Corridor, and its name suggests it only belongs to Christon. So that's the reason for raising the point that it should be something that appears to be open for all, and it doesn't seem to be that way. I don't know if that message got through.
I'll take a note of that, Brandon, but certainly that was the responses that we've been given, but we can certainly feed that back to NHS Lanarkshire. Yeah.
Colin has raised his hand.
I think you're right, Brandon, the fact that it's called a community hub.
Yes.
And that's, as you say, expand it a wee bit more to the community, embrace it a wee bit more. I mean, I welcome it's on our doorstep sort of thing. It's all good and well, but as you say, it's all part of the Northern Corridor. It's all part of for everyone, but yeah, a wee bit different. Step out the box a wee bit.
Isabel?
I think the other issue is with the amount of house building that's going on and the amount of new residents. A lot of them don't actually know the geography in which they live in. They don't understand that you know the kind of boundaries of the Northern Corridor. They don't know where. If you live in Gartcosh and you've just appeared here, well, do you know where Auchinlock is? Do you know where Molliesburn is? Do you know where Moodiesburn is? So for new residents, it's particularly difficult for them to navigate where they actually belong to, and if they can actually get access to services. And if it's somewhere that says Christen, then is it only for people that live in Christen as far as people in Gartcosh are concerned, or Auchinlock is concerned, where there's new development? Because if you move in from Glasgow and you just go to buy a house and you look at a housing scheme and you look at road links and you look at a school, you're not familiar with the rest of the area that you live in. The naming of that particular facility would have been helpful. And again, yet another example of we don't ask the community.
Thanks for that, Isabel. Brandon, can I do another wee quick update on that I've been given as well? Is that okay?
Is this on the health part?
Yeah, it was about something else that was related in relation to educational capacity.
Oh, well, yes, education is
okay?
the next bit.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. McPherson's put his hand up. Is this relating to the health part?
Sorry, yeah, just very quickly. I have to take the reverse of what's been argued there. I think new people moving into the area certainly know where Christen is, but new people moving into the area probably wouldn't understand what Northern Corridor means, and I would suggest that probably the majority of people within the Northern Corridor don't understand the Northern Corridor in the context of the council and what we are speaking about here. So I think, calling it Christen Community Hub, I don't think there's too much of an issue there. I think the most important thing for us is that we get the health services that we need within the area, and then we worry about the name. I think that's a secondary issue. Just my view, though, just my view.
Okay, thank you for that. Christine, you was going to move on to the education piece, which is the next part of this.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. The update that I was given was in relation to Christen High School. And the fact that it is within the current capital programme to increase the capacity of the school. Works are at an early stage in relation to this, and I was informed that updates will be provided as they become available. So it was just to kind of give you a wee update on that.
Right, well, let's just step back a bit and go back to the primary school. Obviously, we're aware from previous discussions that the primary school is going to be oversubscribed. We're aware that Steps Primary School is oversubscribed. I can tell you that Auchinlock Primary School is oversubscribed, and we have had representations from parents that live within our area that are saying, which school will their children be able to go to? There is no school in the area that they can go to. In fact, some of them are actually being allocated schools that are in Glasgow. So we did ask, going way back, it was Alice that asked for a meeting with the education people to sort out what's happening with education of our young people in the Northern Corridor, but that doesn't seem to have been forthcoming. And again, the point was raised earlier on about people not wishing to come to meetings with us. This has got to the point where it's being requested that we actually have a a single issue board meeting specifically on this education piece. Are you able to get something like that into being?
We can look into that, Brandon. Certainly we can take that back and feedback your views on that and your request there for a special board meeting. Yeah.
It's not, as I said, it's not my views. As you know, the meetings that we've had across this year have brought this into focus numerous times, but it hasn't really been addressed. Andrew, you put your hand up.
I mean, yeah, I'll certainly leave the request with Christine. But Brandon, I think that we have discussed this, and then Steps Primary School's got a roll of 405, and it's got an occupancy limit of 455. I'm unsure.
So why are parents that live in Steps being told their children can't get into Steps Primary?
Because there's other areas of North Lanarkshire, and we know that through a boundary change, that those areas were allocated to Glasgow in terms of school catchment areas, and that remains the case, and that will stay the case, because that was done without any sort of agreement of the councils, and we didn't have the capacity, so that's the reason that some people are going to the Glasgow schools. But I think that this was raised before, and we did ask for the specific examples of the actual people who couldn't get their children to a school in the Northern Corridor, who live in the Northern Corridor. I don't think there was one, Brandon.
Oh, well, in that case, then we can get some to come then. If that's the case, if you want that.
I'll leave the meeting with Christine, but yep. That has been raised before.
Isabel. Isabel, you're still on mute.
I'd just like to say that
Can I quickly come in? Sorry.
There's been a meeting regarding the Gartcosh School and the upgrade of Christen High School through a grant of LEAP funding from the Scottish Government. I think it is absolutely appalling that the school in Gartcosh is being considered for LEAP funding. We have been waiting 4.5 years for a school. It has been a problem that is 20 years old. It is a catchment area that was changed in 2010. The council's track record in this school is absolutely disgraceful. And we now have an option A and an option B. Option A is that they get the LEAP funding and they will build a school. And if they can get the land that they're looking at across the line. Now, a school was not to be built unless it was a community hub. A community hub to communities means amenities. We have no parks, we have no sports facilities outside or inside. We have nothing for our children. And we are now looking at option 2, that might be 2 schools, which will cost considerably more. And you don't have to be that intelligent to work out. They have got the land in Gartcosh for the school that they sit on. They've got the community hall across the road, and they've got playing fields up in Mount Ellen. That is the only land except for estates that belong to housing. So therefore, we're looking at a refurbishment of a school in Gartcosh, because there's no land there to build one, and possibly build on playing fields, because Councillor McLaren has been advocating that for years. The school's going there. And Gartcosh Residents and Tenants Association has on 3 occasions put forward a plan which reduces the costs considerably for the land, has earmarked the land, and has stated to North Lanarkshire Council, and they will not come to a forum to discuss it with the residents. And that is unacceptable. It's unacceptable that the community has a solution. We have had notification from a developer who owns the land that says they will give them the land to build the school, and they will give the community the land to build the community hub which they want. And North Lanarkshire Council will not meet us in that. And they're looking to get a grant for the Scottish office when that money was ring-fenced 4.5 years ago. And inflation pressures and everything else have come onto that, but it's probably it's just not affordable. And they've already had 2 bites at the cherry trying to get LEAP funding, and they've failed. So if they fail in the 3rd time, then we're looking at 2 schools which will cost even more money. And the only land they've got is the current school. So I'm saying to myself, if it's just going to refurb the school that's in Gartcosh and build on the only land that's available that belongs to North Lanarkshire Council is Plainfields, which Mr McLaren in Ward 5 wants, and we're sitting here with a community growth area in Ward 6 and we still don't have a school, and we've accepted all the houses. It's just not on, and we need a serious discussion with decision makers in the room to explain to us where is the money for the school that was there 4 years ago, and what is happening, and why is our suggestions not viable. If somebody can give me a good reason, I'm more than willing to accept it. I am not willing to accept a shut door. We're not discussing it with you for commercial sensitive reasons when none of it is commercially sensitive. So Andrew, I would like you to take that back if possible.
Alice, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Brandon. For those who attended the most recent Northern Corridor Community Forum, you'll remember that there was representation made by the Dunlop Streets of Crowwood Grange and Steps, and you've touched on it already, Andrew, regarding the legacy boundary issues and the catchment area issues. And at the forum, a commitment was made to raise this at the board this evening. And Christine, if I could ask you please to add that the residents there are requesting clarification regarding the delay in consultation for a catchment area review for the Crowwood Grange, and I can forward on the details of the content of their submission, Christine, if that's helpful for you. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Alice.
Councillor Lennon.
Thanks very much, Brandon. I'm going to touch upon Isabel Kelly's points about Gartcosh Primary. What a complete shambles, in my opinion. That's 4.5 years I've had to present continuously arguments in favour to trying to bring this school. We've had changes in site without statutory consultation, which I raised yesterday's committee. And in addition to that as well, we have a constant goalpost that seems to be shifting left to right when it comes to actually trying to get a spade in the ground and trying to get the school started. Now, let me be perfectly clear. My blame does not lie with officers. I think officers have the most challenging job in the world in trying to bring a school to Gartcosh. However, to touch upon Isabel's points in relation to inflationary pressures, this is 4.5 years to 5 years, I think it is now, that this saga has been continuing. Our issue is in relation to Gartcosh Primary School, and what it appears to me is the LEAP funding is being used as an opportunity to try and spread the cost for 2 schools. That's what it appears on the face of it to me. Now, I've not been briefed by anybody in Schools and Centres 24 in relation to the purpose of the LEAP funding, but what I would say is, in relation to this, that if it is a case that Plan B, which was confirmed at yesterday's committee, is, as Isabel surmises, that one's going to remain on the current Gartcosh school site, and as Councillor McLaren's previously highlighted in the past, that the school will be going to Mount Ellen football pitches, and that's the alternative for the 2 schools. Where does that leave the concept of a community hub in which we were promised 4.5 years ago? And I think that this is a prevalent point now. It seems as if this school site is being downgraded continuously. Now, I could blame the sins of the father and the lack of foresight used on behalf of the council, but I think the prevalent point here is I seem to be the only elected official in Ward 6 that's making point in relation to this. There seems to be a paralysis in my colleagues who seem to go along with Plan B and Plan A and Plan C and whatever other plans are being presented on the day. And it's disappointing that we are at a stage where we're seeing a local village having to be 114% over capacity in August this year, graded a C site for the worst learning environments in Scotland. These statistics are not imaginary, they're not made up. The pressures on our school and the village at present are considerable. And again, I'm not seeing as much as an automatic sort of response to this to try and get things quicker over the line. In addition to this as well, what we also have is within the school in particular, we've got a number of porta cabins and a lack of recreational space for our children. Our children's attainment is significantly affected here. Educational attainment's been significantly affected. And I'm certainly not politicising this because I've been shouting about it for the last 4.5 years, especially when it was on the Heathfield farm site. Again, why is no alternative ever been presented other than the alternative that the officers have ran away and came back with? Now, surely there should have been a bigger mapping exercise in the local village and got caution to keeping it in the catchment area. And a number of sites being presented, as Isabel's already highlighted, developers have gave their willingness to enter into negotiation with the council about potential sites. But here we find that only 2 options have ever been presented. And now that the 2 options are coming to an end, it seems to be we've got a choice of downgrading the size of the school and the capacity for the school for 2 separate school sites. This is a ridiculous state of affairs. And I think that's quite concerning. And hopefully there will be a mechanism for escalation in this, because I really do think it needs to be brought to the Scottish Government's attention now that this is how the council has conducted this process over the last 4.5 years.
Thank you, Greg. And finally, Isabel.
We went to the border and came through to Edinburgh in meeting with the owners of land who are willing to actually give up land for a school and for community facilities. And we've let the council know this on 3 occasions. Now, it beggars belief that the council will not even meet you on that to say, right, can we discuss it? And this land is outside the development plan. So it is not even the same value of what the council would be paying for other lands. It would be cheaper. Surely the Scotland Audit has got something to say about that the council would willfully spend twice as much money and say they're concerned about inflationary costs when there's ground there that's not in the development plan, that they have got the actual powers to amend the development plan should they wish to include this land. And it sits in Ward 6 and no one will speak to us about it. That just begs belief.
Thank you. I think, Christine, you've got the gist of why we're looking for a separate meeting on this. Matt, your name's in the frame for future board meetings.
Brandon, I think I've got the update for that as well. I know Matt's name's next to that, but is it okay if I give you that update?
Well, yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Just in terms of future board meetings, the issue that was raised was in relation to face-to-face meetings. We really have the intention to return to face-to-face meetings. However, we don't want to lose out on what we already have. So people being able to join the meeting virtually, online, and also being able to view it live streamed. So the issue, I've kind of looked into this a wee bit more, and it isn't that the live stream itself is an issue. The actual issue is live streaming the whole meeting. You can actually, we can see the people that want to join it, but we need to be able to live stream the whole meeting. So this requires appropriate infrastructure to be put in place. And the equipment that is required for that is not portable. So it would mean then that would need to be placed in 1 or 2 areas within the community board area. What we're looking at just now is kind of estimates and costs in relation to that, and trying to look at how we can put that in place. So we are very much working on that. We want to move back to face, but we need to make sure that other people are able to kind of contribute in the way that they do just now, and we don't want to lose out on that. So we will certainly keep you up to date on progress in relation to that, but we are moving things forward, and we're looking at that just now. So we will update you at future meetings. Thank you.
Teresa.
Always possible to look at the community centres that are sitting at the heart of our communities when you're putting the infrastructure in place. If I can just add that, I mean, we've got a new centre, £2.2 million centre, that we could be hosting meetings, you know, for anything basically. So when you're looking at the infrastructure, I hope you'll take consideration for the centres and the anchor organisations that are located within our communities.
Yeah, but thanks for raising that, Teresa. Yeah.
We all look forward to being able to meet face to face. Some of us already do in our smaller meetings, but the board meeting would be a good place for that to also be occurring. And okay, yes, I agree. We should still have the ability for it to be open to the widest possible access that we can make. Peter, community facilities at Steps Primary School.
I think Isabel's got her hand up from the previous point, Chair.
Right, that's because I'm reading notes. Isabel, sorry.
Just a 2-second thing. Christine, could I get an email from you based on my comments tonight, who it's gone to, if you're the person that's doing it and it's not Andrew, and what the response is back from my comments in terms of meeting to discuss the school with the community? Thank you. I don't want to wait till the minutes come out, you know, 3 months later. I'd like a response to this fairly quickly.
Okay, no problem, Isabel.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for your help.
Peter.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, the update has been received from the team that carried out the engagement session on the 27th of September at Steps Primary School, and highlighted a couple of issues around the adaptations required to reinstate daytime access. That will be done in 3 stages. And very briefly, how the council endeavour to carry out the work as soon as they can. There's a building warrant has been granted on the library design, and there's negotiations taking place now with the building owners, and the designs to create access to the rear of the building and adapt internal and external access points have been approved. So that update should have been sent out to all the participants at that session on the 27th. That's the update we received.
Thank you. Yes, I've seen that circulated. Matt, your name appears again. Festive decorations.
Brandon, I again have an update on that one. Sorry, if it's okay, can I give that update just now?
Should I just replace Matt with Christine?
That might be the way to go. So I should start by extending an apology for any confusion for raising expectations locally. So I've received feedback on the question that was raised in relation to the festive decorations. I think there's been an issue with the communication that was circulated. Now, that's not just me saying that, that's the folk within the council that had sent it out originally through John Ashcroft's team. The information circulated should have been clearer, that this related to communities that historically had trees and festive lighting, in which case the infrastructure was already in place. And the quotations provided would have related to the installation of the trees associated lighting or the festive decorations that would have been installed. Where they have not been provided historically, there would have been additional requirements for site surveys, design work and structural stability checks, and unfortunately no resource was available to accommodate that additional work that would have been needed for any new installations. So I was asked to extend the apology that the information that went out was confusing. It wasn't. It was difficult to can understand that was the meaning behind that. That's what I've been asked to kind of.
My comment was, I do know that in Auchinlock we were fully aware the infrastructure was not there, and the information suggested that we could ask for a quotation to be provided, and that we, the community, could have funded that. Yet they came back and told us no, we haven't got the facility to do so. So we're just totally confused as to why that communication came out in the first place. Isabel. You had your hand up first, Isabel, if you're not quick.
Sorry, I keep going off mute. Christine, I raised an issue and responded to what was there. And although I realise, you know, you can't get down to village level on every occasion, we had Steps and we had Christon that had infrastructure for lights and trees. So are you telling me that the lights and the trees from Steps through to Muirhead would be put back in?
I don't know the answer to that one, Isabel. I think it was all I can give you is the answer that I've been given to kind of provide. Can certainly take that and ask that question.
Well, you know, again, we've got policies that went on about things that they couldn't do because of budgetary pressures, which I understand. And as I say, Gartcosh, we provide our own tree, we provide our own lighting, we run on batteries, and we go up and change them every 10 days. We don't know how to hear all the details, but we get the lights on, let's put it that way, ourselves. So we don't rely on anybody to do that for us. But when you're looking at the uniqueness of the villages and the Northern Corridor, when there's a policy that comes out, it's blanket, and they don't consider the fact. They only look at, oh, we're doing the town centres, and that's logical because that's where the biggest population is, and people can go and visit the town centre, etc. You can't do that in the Northern Corridor. So with the pressures of cost of living, etc., there should be a couple of trees on that A80, and the lights, etc., should be put back on in that area, because you don't know whether kids or families have got enough money to put Christmas lights up or trees up or whatever they're doing. You don't know what the circumstances are. But if you live in an area where there's a town centre, you'll be able to see a tree, you'll be able to see lights, but not if you live in the Northern Corridor. So although they've said they would put them in, that letter basically says they'll put them in what was there pre-COVID, but we don't see any evidence of that other than the fact I think there's a tree in Muirhead, which I think the community bought themselves.
Teresa.
I think, you know, we've got a major issue with the fact that the astronomical costs this year. We've paid for a Christmas tree in our community every year. It's cost us about £780 plus VAT. This year, to put up our 4 lights, one designed by the community and a Christmas tree, it's costing us over £2,000. Now that's some rise, you know, in the cost of a Christmas tree for a community. But apart from that, if there's any damage or the lights blow off and to repair them, the community then has the cost of that as well. You know, it's totally ludicrous to think that in our small communities we can't have a Christmas tree. You know, and I know there's budget cuts and I know there's cost cutting, but you know, we're in a crisis time here for families that are probably not going to be able to move out of their communities. And a Christmas tree in the centre of a community where they put a memory on the tree with a ribbon, where you put your lights on, you have a big festive day for the community. I mean, that you just can't do this year because £2,000 will go a long way to feeding families and opening centres and having a free Santa Claus and gifts for the kids. I just absolutely am stunned by the fact that a Christmas tree can move from about £800 to over £2,000 in a community. Where they get the cost from is just, I just can't believe it. And I'm really upset, not only for our community, but for all the communities. I think it's absolutely atrocious that the council have taken this way this year. There's nothing positive about it for any of our small communities.
Isabel,
Sorry,
you have your hand up again.
If anybody wants a Christmas tree, let me know. We've just purchased a Christmas tree for the pricely sum of £81. That's a 13-foot tree. My previous life in garden centres, I've got a contact for trees. So if anybody wants a tree, wants to buy a tree, let me know and I'll see if I can acquire them from suppliers that I know. But we just put ours up up today and still to put the lights on. But we can buy a tree for £81, a 13-foot tree. So I don't know where the council's getting their costings from.
Totally, Isabel. We'll be buying one as well for our community.
Right, well, if you want one, Teresa, get in touch with me tomorrow and I'll give you the details.
Thanks, Isabel.
Thank you. Christine, are you taking Matt's role again? Community drop-in points.
Yes, sorry, Brandon. Yes, it will be me, thanks. So community drop-in points, it was just to kind of make people aware, although some of you are already aware of this. A range of community organisations across Northern Corridor have accessed funding to provide community drop-ins for local people. Drop-ins are at various times and days, and there is an interactive map that identifies where and when these take place. And obviously the purpose of this is to support local communities in relation to the cost of living crisis. So a number of organisations, as I said, have been really proactive in setting up these kind of community the kind of community drop-ins. Sorry, I was going to say community hub. I've got hubs in my head. So I was just to say that we can circulate that list. The interactive map, it's already on the council's website, and we can get that circulated to you as soon as possible. We would appreciate if you obviously try and encourage as many local people to be aware of these. And I know, Brandon, I was just looking at you in my top corner there. I know, for example, in Auchinlock, it's been working very successfully so far with people accessing that. And the same is being said across a number of communities in the Northern Corridor. So we want as many people to be able to access those services as possible. So I would ask you to make sure that as many people as you know are aware of the kind of provisions locally. That's all I wanted to say, Brandon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. On the local development stroke investment section, Peter, local engagement stroke consultation.
Brandon, just harking back to the previous point, I think we've got Anne-Marie and Teresa with their hands up.
Oh, that's because I'm looking at my notes. Give Anne-Marie a go first. Anne-Marie.
Thanks, Brandon. Just what Christine was saying there about the interactive maps and the warm hub scenario, it has been quite widely shared over social media, and the map itself is highlighting for our community that there is a space that's supposed to be available and up and running and happening, and it's not. It's not. I have raised the issue with a few folk at North Lanarkshire, so we'd be keen to clarify what's going on there, as we would like to publicise it to our community that it is a space that's happening, but when we've made our own investigations and found out that it isn't, then we're not going to advertise it to our community to get people to go along and it's not actually happening.
Anne-Marie, can you separately send me the details of that and we can look into that? Thanks.
I think Peter already has the information. He should be able to give that to you, Christine. Sorry.
No problem. That's great, Anne-Marie. Thanks for that.
Teresa?
Our hub's up and running. Obviously, our maps and times are out as well. But if anybody, you know, in the Northern Corridor wants a visit to the centre, 10-hour warm hubs, we'll utilise our community transport and support you basically. And anything else we can do to support any of then please let us know. And we're open like through Christmas and New Year. We're only taking the 2 days off. So if anybody's looking for activities that aren't open, or their hubs aren't open at that time, then get in touch with us and we'll give you as much support as we can with community transport to access ours.
Thank you, Teresa. Peter, local development stroke investment.
Thanks, Brandon. Just a quick update on, first of all, any consultations. This is an opportunity if anyone's aware of any consultations to highlight them. For example, I've recently sent out stuff again from North Lanarkshire Carers Together, who are trying to survey the impact of the cost of living on carers, and are asking community organisations and any other groups for their views on that. So that's went out this week. But if there's anything else that MD's aware of, any other consultations you want publicised and sent out across the Community Matters mailing list and the board, please feel free to highlight that and we'll get that out. And just on funding opportunities, I touched on the consortium earlier. Great to see the application successful for the children and young people up at Moodiesburn. I'm glad to say that Gartcosh tenants and residents have also been successful, and we've got another 1 or 2 pending in the Northern Corridor area that hopefully will be successful too. So just wanted to highlight that finally Northern Corridor is getting some recognition at consortium level, and thanks to Susan Drummond in particular for being supportive of that. Again, just to highlight, the Council's Recover NL Environmental Fund is still available. Some groups have already been funded before. Certainly you can apply once more, particularly if it's a progression on previous activity, but certainly if it's still stuff that you've done before, like litter picks, etc., please feel free to apply. Give me a shout if there's any assistance required. And just to highlight again, the Lotteries Awards for All programme, still a cold spot in Northern Corridor. They're looking for applications. Again, happy to support anyone that's looking for any assistance there. That's me on that one, Brandon.
Thank you. Andrew McPherson, do you have anything that you would like to update us with as our community coordinator?
I'll do, Brandon. I'll keep it very brief because I'm conscious at the time. So the first and probably the most important thing is there's going to be a review of the effectiveness of the community boards. Obviously, they were established back in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, and I think we've had about 8 cycles since then. So the whole purpose of the review, obviously, is to look at how effective they've been. And are we actually delivering what the intention was? Obviously, I don't think we want to be too critical on ourselves. We have only been going for 8 cycles, so and you can see yourself, the LOIPs are at a very, very initial stage. So, but the review itself will focus on sort of 4 key themes about the focus about how the boards actually ensures the works for the benefit of local communities, how we interact as with a board, but also as a partnership as well. The people on the board, how they're selected, organised, resourced and developed, that type of thing. And also the alignment, how the actual how the board set up so we can make effective decisions, they can take action and we're actually accountable as well. So the views will be sought through, it's an online survey issued in mid-December 2022. So, and it'll be given sort of a month sort of response time on that. All responses will be anonymous, and obviously all board participants are encouraged to provide an honest, but I would say sort of evidence-based, sort of balanced response to it as well would be good. The initial outputs from that review will be shared at the first cycle of the meetings in 2023. And the actual review itself, the council assigned it's an independent champion, somebody who isn't involved in the boards at all, actually Ken Adamson, who's our head of audit and risk. And the online survey will be sent to all community board members from Ken. So when that comes out, I would obviously welcome everyone to take part in that as much as they possibly can. I've got a few other wee things, Brandon, but I see there's a couple of hands up. I don't know if you want me to pause or just want me to crack on.
Well, we'll give Councillor Lennon. You've got a point to make here.
Yeah, just on the community boards point, Andrew, again, not to heap praise on you here, but I really do think there's a substantial change in this community board since your tenure, to be perfectly frank, as the community champion. I think it is greatly appreciated that we've got somebody with a level of expertise to come in here and to be perfectly frank. But one of the questions, and I'm probably being a wee bit unfair again, in relation to the evolutionary cycle of the community boards, obviously the consultation process will be to highlight that. But the key point for me in differing with other local authorities in which I see, other local authorities have a similar makeup, whether it be in Glasgow, area committee boards, and other local authorities, it's something similar. Each of them carry funding with them, and our community boards don't. So would it be possible that we have a conversation at a later date, or would the consultation be the key sort of aim to highlight that point, that perhaps we should look at monies coming to community boards where we can invest in capital projects within our local areas and within our villages and things like that, and rather than obviously we currently have at the moment. It gives more thrust and more gusto, I think, for community boards to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely. I mean, I think that's a perfectly valid point, to be honest, Councillor Lennon. So, again, that's the type of thing I think that's a constructive thing. Is certainly something that can be picked up in the review and how we take the boards forward and make them the best that they possibly can be.
Anne-Marie?
Sorry, I hadn't lowered it. Apologies.
All right, okay. Andrew, you can continue. Oh, Isabel has just put a hand up.
I'd just like to acknowledge both Christine and Peter's contribution to the board for the game. I've had more contact with Peter, but I'd like to acknowledge the fact in terms of helping with grant funding and things like that. Their help has been invaluable, and I would just like to note that, please.
Apologies, Brandon. I should have said the same as well. Apologies, Peter and Christine. I didn't mean to forget you. I apologise.
Thanks very much.
Andrew, do you wish to continue?
Yeah, and I think on the same vein, yeah, Christine and Peter, I can't really take any credit for anything that goes on here. It's Christine and Peter that really do the vast bulk, and Matt as well. Matt's still on the call. So, but anyway, it's enough backslapping for us all. So I'll carry on with the budget consultation as well. There's going to be a budget consultation on the 8th of December for the Northern Corridor. So that'll take place. Invites, I think they were supposed to be going out possibly today. I don't know if the board members have received them, but if they're not now today, they'll be going out tomorrow. So that will be an exercise. It'll be myself that'll be sort of hosting it, but there'll be other people there from the council as well. And it's really just going over outlining what the next 3 financial years look like. Not particularly pretty, I think is probably a good summary. So, and then how do we actually want to prioritise where we actually allocate that money? So that'll be an exercise on 8th of December, but further details on that will be coming out. And very, very briefly, Brandon, just to highlight a few other things. The new litter bin strategy, the public consultation exercise, that was submitted to the Environment and Climate Change Committee on the 9th of November. The full details of that are actually on the MARS website. Hopefully everybody's got access to that. If not, we can certainly circulate a copy of that report. The key thing that came out of the consultation, to be honest, and just to obviously realise that we do listen, is that the feedback we got was not so much about the bins on the pavements, but more or less the bins that have been removed from the parks and open spaces. So there's a willingness there to look at that, and it will certainly be operationally led in terms of where we have the litter issues. That we need to start putting these back in, because I think it's hands up when we took away too many bins too quickly from the parks. And also just about legal signage and everything else. There's a report's been agreed at the same committee, and it also deals with putting things up on lampposts and everything else about the proper process. So again, it's on MARS, and if anybody doesn't have access, please let me know and I'll forward that on to you. The North Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, that's actually been published now. It's available in local libraries in hard copy, and it's also on the council website. I'm sure people have access to that. And quite timely, obviously at this time of year, the council's winter preparedness information is now all available on the website as usual, just at the usual places. So obviously we encourage people to look at that, especially for building up resilience within your own communities as soon as possible. And there was a Developing the Young Workforce event in Motherwell Concert Hall that brought together schools, employers and young people, and it was a very successful event. And there was 53 work-related opportunities were created as a result of it, 35 apprenticeships, 22 training opportunities, and 11 enterprise and industry challenges. So again, harking back to just what we've been discussing about earlier on. So that's it, Brandon. Try to keep it as brief as I can. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And finally, Christine, are you doing something on the local development programme?
It's actually myself, Brandon.
Oh, right.
Thanks. Yeah, the report's been issued with the papers, and there's just a couple of updates I wanted to bring up and chat about, possibly seeking approval for some car parking projects. I'll come to them at the end. Steps Cultural Centre Pathways, the work has begun there. Some of the trees have been getting cut back, so that's starting to progress, and we're just waiting for word around the associated paths work. As you know, the ongoing saga of the entrance feature at Auchinlock, slowly but surely getting there, hopefully sometime this week.
Don't commit to anything.
Never do. Also, the Moodiesburn Kelvin Drive Wheel Sports Facility, that's due to be erected next year, or early next year, but we've spoken with the Children and Young People subgroup, and the Youth Voice Group are going to assist us with some of the consultation there of young people in the Moodiesburn area. So we'll keep you posted with that through the subgroup activity. The Cross Locality Heritage Projects, the Northern Corridor volunteers are meeting weekly with their exhibition up at the Pivot Centre. And just wanted to mention the potential, you'll see there's 2 potential deleted projects in the Cardown area. We're now looking at, in partnership with Cardown Community Meadow, a Mugga project there. And Anne-Marie and Caroline, the guys, are helping us out with a bit of consultation with the neighbours who live immediately on the proposed site. So hopefully we can get that moving quite quickly, and that will help strengthen, potentially budgets pending, getting that Mugga project up and running there in the new year. And in terms of projects seeking approval, there's a couple of proposals came in from the Gartcosh area and one from Glenboig. The 2 in Gartcosh are probably a bit more straightforward in terms of land. They're potentially on grass areas that the council own. The one in Glenboig needs a bit of further consultation around viability. It's a bit more complicated in terms of potentially removing trees and curbs, etc. But there is a dire need up there. Centre Street, Teresa, at the junction with the shops. But so really just asking, pending funding obviously, and it being approved at committee, are the board quite happy for those 3 proposals for car parking to go on the LDP list? Can I ask if that's...
It improves amenities for the community, so I would have thought so. Anybody?
Correct.
Greg, you've got your hand up.
Thanks very much again, Chair. Officers will recall with this year's budget setting process, there was an agreement in place for a new football pitch to be allocated to Moodiesburn. Do officers have any update in relation to that?
No update as we speak, Councillor Lennon, but certainly we will pursue that, try and get an update to you, obviously well before the next board meeting as soon as possible. So we'll come back on that.
Thanks very much, Peter.
No problem. That's me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And finally, any other competent business? I would hope that we've aired everything we need to. Oh, right, okay. Christine, you put your hand up.
Very, very briefly, just to make people aware that there's a Scottish Parliamentary Community Planning Inquiry which is ongoing just now, and there's opportunities for participation. What I'll do is, I just found out about this today, I'll get that circulated to the community board, so if anybody wants to participate in that, then they'll be able to do that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And anybody else with any items? Then can I take this opportunity to thank you for attending the meeting, for those of you that are still with us, for your perseverance. But I do consider that we have a lot to discuss, and we do have some good discussion, and everybody participates, which is the benefit of these meetings, is getting people together. And we keep talking about consultation, and that's what this is all about. So thank you all for your part in this meeting this evening. And since we're not going to meet again until next year, can I wish you all a very good festive season, if I dare say it, Christmas, and a happy new year. And I look forward to seeing you in 2023. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to the chair. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.